The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this broadcast or podcast without the express written consent of Spaced Out Radio or Spaced Out Radio Limited is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised.
Bumblefoot. Bumblefoot.
Are you experienced?
Stop right there!
From high atop the mountains of British Columbia to you listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
They let us play with all our toys. They let us think that we're big boys. They let us make the louder noise, but women rule the world. They let us think we're Superman.
You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, on iTunes and TuneIn. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show, or on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show.
I try to act so cool, but you know I'm just a fool for you. For you. I will stop till I reach the top just to be there with you.
Dave, oh Dave, are you playing with Bigfoot and aliens again?
Dad, you gotta stop haunting the ghost. It's scaring them.
All right, seriously, put down the pointy sticks.
Oh, the deeper I fall.
Okay! Game on! Game on! Game on!
The password is...
All right.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride on Spaced Out Radio. Mr. Bumblefoot, Dave is ready for liftoff.
I try to act so cool, but you know I'm just a fool for you.
Seriously, Dave? Really? Aren't you a little old for a tinfoil hat?
Hello, Toby. Bye-bye. Love you. Bye-bye.
Please take your seat above us. We will be able to prepare for takeoff. Start. 2, 1. Boost ignition and lift off.
I'm such a lucky guy, 'cause after all this time, it's like the deeper I go, the deeper I fall. The deeper I go, the deeper I fall.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. It's great to have you along for the ride on this Thursday, November 9th. Friday, November 10th, if you're on the East Coast or across the pond. Hope you had a great day and night. We are live right here in the Great White North on top of the snowy mountains of central British Columbia as we are here for you 7 days a week. We welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. We're also live at spacedoutradio.com, on Spreaker, KTLK, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas, the High Plains Talk Radio Network, and if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Like our music, then rock with us to Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL, formerly of Guns N' Roses, currently of Art of Anarchy and Sons of Apollo. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio. Now, we're all over social media, so I would personally love it if you follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, you can follow me at Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's brand new, Spaced Out Radio. It's no longer Spaced Out Radio Show. It's just Spaced Out Radio. You'll see our Carl logo on there. Listen to us on iHeartRadio in the United States. TalkStream Live. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download and subscribe to our shows on iTunes. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. Now, if you want to take part in tonight's show, you got to do me a favor. I need you to fill in and sign in to one of the chat rooms, either on Revolution Radio, Spreaker, or on Facebook at the SOR Space Travelers Club. Or if you're on Twitter, just use the hashtag SpacedOutRadio, and I will get to your questions in there as well. Now, if you head to our website for $5 a month, you can become an SOR Space Traveler. You can also shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. Read the Encounter online. We got some great stories on there right now, including one I just wrote up about the driverless shuttle crashing in Las Vegas on its maiden voyage. We have my blog on there. You can also fill out an SOR Sightlines report if you've had an experience or a sighting that you can't explain. We got great video feeds as well from UFO Seekers Tim Doyle and Leslie Mitchell Clark's Contact TV. You know, this show is almost 3 years old now, and I have to say, I absolutely love it when we hit a topic that we've never covered before. And we're heading into a discussion that I can honestly say I don't know much about. I'm fully aware of that. Yet, there's so much intrigue when it comes to things like secret societies, Freemasonry, and the occult in general, that it just makes you wonder if any of this is really true as it stares us right in our faces on a daily basis. Secret clubs, secret handshakes, private parking spots, silence to those who don't feel they need to know. It's a strange world that we really envelopes around us on a daily basis. Award-winning author Robert W. Sullivan the Fourth is our guest tonight on the show. Robert is a philosopher, historian, jurist, theologian, best-selling author, and a lawyer. Mr. Sullivan is also a Freemason, having joined in 1997. He became a 32nd degree Scottish Rite Mason in 1999. Robert, thank you so much for joining us on Spaced Out Radio. You're going the distance tonight. Our audience appreciates that. How are you?
Oh, thank you, Dave, for having me on. It's much appreciated. It's my pleasure to be with you on Spaced Out Radio tonight, and I'm really looking forward to tonight's show. And again, thank you for having me on. Looking forward to it.
Well, this is a brand new topic for us, and, you know, as we try to expand our horizons in show topics, this is one topic, Robert, that I can honestly say I've wanted to do for a long time, but you have to find the right person in order to talk about it, because there's not a lot of people who are willing to go in depth with what we are dealing with on a daily basis right around us, because let's face it, Freemasons are everywhere. There's lodges everywhere. I used to work with a couple, and those were the first two that I had ever met knowingly in my life. In 1997, when you decided to join the Freemasons, what led you to that decision?
Right. Yeah, it was always something I'd always kind of had in the back of my head. It was something I always wanted to do. As a kid growing up here in Baltimore, I was always interested in like UFOs and cryptozoology, Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster. And I was always interested in, mysticism and the occult, things like that. It was just, second nature to me almost. And I come from a long line of Maryland Masons. I have grandfathers who were Freemasons. In fact, one of my great-grandfathers was a past master. And that's a title given to a Mason who serves as a worshipful master. What's that? That is a person who runs their lodge on a daily basis, on a daily basis for a year. It's basically the chief of the lodge for a year. So I have a lot of Freemasons in my family background, in my family tree. And this was just something that, always interested me. There's really no other way to explain it. And even when, I've been on other shows, when I went to England in 1992, it was really when I was introduced to this whole notion of the Hermetic tradition, influencing, material culture, the fabric of society, reading about, how Masons were influential, how the symbols were influential and were, transcending society in many instances. And this just fascinated me. In 1997, this was right at a time, it was actually 96 when I petitioned the lodge. This was at a time when I was out of college and in between law school. I hadn't gone to law school yet. So this was like a perfect time to do it. And the opportunity presented itself. It was through a mutual friend of my mother and father. This person is no longer alive. And I knew him very well, and he wore the Masonic ring, the square and compasses, like many of us do. And I just approached him and I said, I see you're a Mason. I said, it's something I've always wanted to do. Can I join? And he said, yes. And I got a petition. I filled it out. And within a few months, I was up at the lodge going through the first degree ritual. And it took me, I think around 6, 7, 8 months to go through the lodge ritual. This was 1997 now. And then I did the Scottish Rite in 1999. So it was always something I was interested in.
You having the family lineage of this, you've been around it your entire life. Did you know any different? Did you know that there were people who knew nothing about these private clubs?
Well, yeah, I guess it's just an interest level. Not everybody is an expert in everything. And certainly, my knowledge to it when I joined was certainly limited. I knew it was a secret society. Like I said, I had family members who were involved with it. But even when I joined, I didn't really understand. It took me, years afterwards to really come to understand the true meaning of the rituals, what a lot of this was trying to encode. That this was dealing with a lot of Christian allegory, dealing with a lot of, almost pagan allegory in many instances, how it all tied in. This was a study that took me 20 years really to start piecing together. And it resulted in the publication of my first book, which was called The Royal Arch of Enoch. And it was just a fascinating journey for me and an adventure almost, going through the rituals, seeing the rituals, and understanding the symbolism, understanding the context, and then applying it. And just certainly in the context of the United States, where I am, how much Freemasonry was influential in the creation of this nation. It's really an astounding study.
Now, forgive my ignorance on this topic, and I forewarned you beforehand that
Sure.
I'm not very up to it. People like me who've never been around this, we may not know what you mean by rituals. Are you able to decipher to us what those are?
Yes. Let me just give a little bit of a backdrop also, and I'll answer the question. Just so just some basic information here. Freemasonry, it dates back. It's very old. It officially comes onto the history pages on June 24th, 1717. That's when it officially emerges as a secret order, as a fraternal body. Naturally, Freemasonry existed prior to 1717. That's irrefutable. There's documentation of that. But as of 1717, that's when it's officially, quote unquote, on the history pages. In fact, we just celebrated our 300th anniversary. When you're dealing with Freemasonry, there's a lot of different language and, a lexicon almost that if you're not a Freemason, you may have a little difficulty understanding, and I'll do my best to flesh all this out and flesh it out. You have Freemasonry, which is the first 3 degrees. This is what's called ancient craft masonry or Blue Lodge Freemasonry. That's the term you'll hear all the time. And this is degrees 1, 2, and 3. And you have to complete the 3rd degree ritual to become a Freemason. If you go through the 1st degree, you cannot hold yourself out as a Freemason. And there are 3 degrees. They're titled the Entered Apprentice. That's the 1st degree. The 2nd degree is called Fellowcraft, and the 3rd degree is called Master Mason. And the 3 rituals, it depends on the lodge that is doing it or orchestrating them. It can take anywhere from 2 months to 1 month to 9 months to go through them. It depends on how pedantic the lodge is. Some lodges require, after you do the lodge, to learn a catechism on them. This is a question and answer. It's predetermined. It's prescripted, but you have to memorize it. Some lodges just let you look at the literature, memorize it, and you can do it. If this is the case, you'll go through the rituals probably within about two months. When I did it, I had to memorize them orally. So it took me 9 months to go through it. The way it works is you petition a lodge. And if your petition is accepted, you fill it out, you send in a check. It's not any brain surgery. And at that point, they'll get the petition and they assign a committee, usually of members in the lodge, and they interview you. And they just want to make sure you're upright, you're honest, you're okay. The one question that they will ask you is, do you believe in a God? Do you believe in a supreme being? Atheists cannot join Masonry. It's only open to people who believe in a supreme being, a God. You can be Christian, you can be Muslim, you can be Jewish, you can be Hindu, whatever your religion is, that's up to you, but you have to believe in some sort of higher being. If you pass that and they're satisfied, they will put you to a vote. The Lodge brothers will go out, and there's a little voting booth inside the Lodge temple that's set up, and you drop a white ball in if you accept the guy, and if you don't, if you want to keep him out, you drop a black cube in. And this is where the term blackballed comes from. And assuming you pass, then you'll come up for the ritual, for the first ritual. And the ritual is just that. It's a ritual. You will be escorted to once you get up there, you will be escorted to an antechamber. You will dress in a unusual outfit, which I would describe as pajamas. It's like a tattered pajama outfit. You probably can find pictures of this online. At which point you're blindfolded and you have a noose put around your neck. At which point in time, you will knock at the lodge door. You will have Mason. You'll just be standing there. I mean, you don't know what's going on. And the Masons, the brothers, will kind of answer for you. There'll be a guy standing over your shoulder. And he does like, for example, you'll knock on the door. They'll put your hand up and you rap 3 times. And a guy will come to the door and say, like, who comes here? You don't answer. The guy standing next to you answers and say something to the effect of your name, which for me would be like Robert Sullivan, a poor blind candid who desires entry into the mysteries of Freemasonry. I'm just paraphrasing. And then they'll shut the door and they go ask the master, and he'll say, okay, let him in. And at that point in time, you go into the lodge and you're just, escorted around the lodge in this outfit, and you just go to station, and they kind of almost do, like, I don't want to say an inspection, but they present you. They present you to the worshipful master. They present you to the 2 wardens. And at that point in time, you take an oath at an altar. And you basically swear loyalty and fidelity to the brotherhood. And once that is accomplished, the blindfold is removed from you. And at which point in time you are escorted back around the lodge, the temple, where you kind of repeat what you almost just did. This is where you get your Masonic apron. At that point in time, you will be escorted out of the lodge, and you'll put your clothes, you redress back, into what you wore up there. And at that point in time, there'll be a break. Once the break is concluded, you'll go in and you'll have a lecture given to you by the worshipful master, where he begins to explain the symbolism of the Masonic Lodge. At that point in time, the meeting will end and you can go home. And at that point, at this point, you will be contacted, usually soon thereafter, about learning the catechism, which is this question and answer session, which is pre-scripted. It's not, there's a question and there's a direct answer, and you have to memorize it. Some lodges make you memorize it orally. That's the way I had to do it. When you learn the catechism, you go back in front of the lodge and you do it. You perform it. They ask you the question. You recite the memorized answer. A lot of times they will split the questions up between other brothers. And what I mean by this is, so like if you go through the entered apprentice degree, you could wait like 2 or 3 months before you get your next degree, because they'll do the ritual on like 3 other people, and you'll go into what's called a catechism class. And it divides the questions in threefold instead of you having to learn everything. At that point, once you pass that, you go up and then you do the catechism for the first degree, the entered apprentice. Once you pass that, then you'll get the second degree, and so on and so forth. And this occurs up to the third degree, which is the Master Mason ritual, which is really what I would call the occult ritual. What I would describe them as, I'll wrap up on this, is I would describe the rituals, and I'm just painting with a very broad stroke right now, is I would describe the rituals as the first degree ritual as sort of a introductory ritual. The second degree ritual is more of explanatory, and it's really the third degree ritual, the Master Mason ritual, where this is the occult ritual. This is the one where everyone knows, that most people are familiar with, where the candidate portrays Hiram Abiff, the architect building Solomon's temple. This ties into the whole notion of the dead and resurrected God-man figure. And once you go through that ritual, you'll pass you'll do a catechism on that as well. Once that's complete, then you're a Freemason. And I'll just end the question on this. At that point, you're a Freemason. You can go up into the lodge anytime. You can, hold yourself out as a Mason. You can wear the ring with the square and compasses on it. At that point, at least in the United States, other Masonic bodies then open up to you. And the two premier ones in the United States are the Scottish Rite and the York Rite. Once you become a Master Mason, those two high degree bodies open up to you. You can join them. It is not mandatory. It is completely up to you. You can join one, both, or neither. It's your decision.
I'm still trying to figure out what the purpose of this group is and why someone would want to join it. I mean, to me, it sounds like religious symbolism, that you're joining a brotherhood along those lines, but I know I'm probably making it way too simplistic.
Well, it's a secret society. It teaches moral instruction. It's for betterment of the self. That's the way I would view it. That's certainly what I got out of it. It can be different for every Mason who joins it. It's voluntary. There is really no solicitation by Masons. You're not supposed to solicit members. It's supposed to be, if you want, the phrase you will constantly hear is to be one, ask one, which is, the way it's been. Now, brothers do solicit, of course, that does happen, but it's a secret order, and it does have religious symbolism in it. It spans, what I would call, you have pagan symbolism, you have Christian symbolism, Jewish symbolism, even Islamic symbolism. It spans many studies and areas. I mean, you're dealing with topics of the ancient mystery schools, Rosicrucianism, Templarism. It's really a fascinating organization. And, it's one of those things when you begin researching it, it really begins, the symbolism and its history really does come out of the file cabinet of, you cannot make this stuff up. It spans history. It ties into history. It ties into philosophy. And for me, it was just a real privilege to join it. And I can tell you, for me personally, I wouldn't want to speak for any other Freemason, but for me personally, my books, The Royal Arch of Enoch and my 2 cinema books, would not exist for my membership in Masonry, because for me personally, it taught me, the one thing that I really got out of it was how to see the world symbolically, and to understand the symbolisms, and really for me to understand it in their proper context. Why this is here but not here, or why, Hermes Trismegistus will appear here but not here. That's why, it's so important to me, or what I really got out of it. But certainly if someone isn't interested in it, I wouldn't want to force someone to join. It skipped over my father. I had grandfathers who were Masons. My father is not a Mason. He had no interest in it whatsoever. So it's really an individual thing, and it's inside of you. And if you want to join, it's there. If not, well, that's okay too.
It amazes me that the group is very much open to anybody of any religious faith, but you mentioned that they do not allow atheists in there. Why are atheists not allowed to join?
It's one of the requirements of Masonry that you have to believe in a supreme being, a God figure. It's been there since day one, and it's just one of the requirements that you have to join. If you could technically, I've been asked this question before. You could say, "Well, I'm an atheist. I'm just going to trick my way in." I mean, there's no. We don't give lie detector tests or anything like that. You could technically trick your way in. But my response to that would be, if you are really an atheist, you would probably have no interest in it anyway. As long as you believe in a supreme being, you're good to go. Whatever your pathway to that supreme being is, they leave that up to you. But certainly the rituals, I would say, have a pagan, Christian, Judaic bent to them. There is a definite, decided Muslim influence as well. That's a fascinating study. There is an occult influence. This is, it has hidden meaning when I use the word occult, so that's in there as well. And then you get into the high degrees as well, and that's fascinating as well. And when you really begin to understand the rituals and what's going on and see them acted out, and then you see how it ties into the high degrees and you understand the symbolism of it, you really will be able to start decoding a lot of things that are hidden in plain sight, whether they be cityscapes or streetscapes or symbolism, or, hidden messages even in movies, or why this monument is here or why this building has a dome on it. This is all ties into this. And it took me 20 years of writing and researching this, and certainly becoming a member of Masonry, to put out my first book, all about this, called The Royal Arch of Enoch. And then it was off of this that I spawned 2 movie books talking about esoteric imagery, where I took all this, studies of the occult and esoteric imagery and turned it on Hollywood. So for me, it was really just a life-changing event. And again, I wouldn't speak for every Freemason out there. I wouldn't want to put words in their mouth. Certainly, I would say, and I'll just end the question on this, that, it's one of the kind of, I don't know how to say it, for each Mason who joins it, they're going to get something different out of it. And I guess that's kind of one of the secrets of Masonry. So when I joined it, this is what I got out of it. But if someone else joined it, they may get something entirely different out of it.
And one of my last foolish questions, and I'm going to ask here.
Oh, it's fine. You're doing fine.
Is, I don't really understand, and many people are probably like me, understand what you mean by the level of degrees of Masonry.
Okay. There are 3 degrees in Blue Lodge Freemasonry. It's Entered Apprentice, Fellow Craft, and Master Mason, and they're rituals. And you have to proceed through these rituals, and they teach you and instruct you in morality and symbolism and things like that. When you get to the 3rd degree ritual, this is the Master Mason ritual. This is where you get into the whole sort of, this is like a passion play almost, where the candidate portrays Hiram Abiff, and this drama unfolds that involves an assassination. It involves the building of Solomon's temple. It involves hidden words and hidden meanings. And the candidate is ultimately brought back, is murdered. The candidate is murdered. Now, he's not actually murdered. He's symbolically killed, and he's brought back to life. And the whole symbolic underpinning with this is its death and resurrection. It's being killed and being brought to a new life. And the whole idea with this ties into doctrines of Gnosticism, which is an ancient theology. It has to do with what I would call consciousness expansion, divine spark ignition. This is what it's trying to do, at least symbolically, and actually, at least it's trying to teach you this. Once you complete that ritual, then you are a Freemason. That's it. You have to go through these 3 degrees that are orchestrated or conducted by a Blue Lodge. Excuse me. When that is complete, then you are a Freemason, and then you have to. The only thing you have to do at that point in time is do a catechism, this question and answer for the final degree, and that's it. Then you're a Freemason. You can hold yourself out as a Freemason. At that point in time, you can go to lodge meetings, and you can sit there and you can interact. You can get involved with the community, and again, you will have these 2 high degree bodies opened up to you called the Scottish Rite and the York Rite, and these are further degrees that expound and expand the story that's been told to you in the Blue Lodge, and they relate, they interlock. And there are things going on inside these high degrees that are critical, that further the story along. And when you get into this and you understand the symbolism of what's going on in the Blue Lodge and how it relates to the high degrees, this is when you will really begin to, the pieces will begin to fall into place for you, where you can see, okay, this is tying into this, and this is tying into this. And, you will begin to understand what these guys, when you get into the symbolism in, architecture, or streetscapes, or just symbolism in general, you will really begin to understand what these guys are going for, the progenitors of this stuff, especially in the United States context, because the whole country is founded upon Freemasonry. You will really begin to put this stuff together and understand, okay, now I understand why there's a triple division of government in the United States, or why the United States Capitol building has a dome on it. This is all Freemasonic. And that was just a very fascinating study for me. And it was the subject matter of my first book called The Royal Arch of Enoch. And like I said, it was just going through the rituals, going through the whole Masonic experience. Without that, there is no way I could have written these 3 books. And I have a 4th one coming out as well, although that's fiction. But for me, I could never have gone and done these 3 books without the initiation into Freemasonry. I hope that answers the question. If it doesn't, I'll certainly try to answer it another way.
It totally does, but I'm still a little confused in regards to how are you a 32nd degree? How did you get there?
Okay, well, that's the Scottish Rite. When you go through the Blue Lodge, that's degrees 1, 2, and 3. That's it. There is nothing else in the Blue Lodge other than those 3 degrees. When you get out of the Blue Lodge, you can then join these 2 high degree bodies, the York Rite and the Scottish Rite. The Scottish Rite is degrees 4 through 32. It's another degree system. And you go in and you start with the 4th degree. The difference with the Scottish Rite and the York Rite is, in the Blue Lodge, the rituals are participatory for the most part. You engage, you walk around the lodge in this outfit. You participate. It's like a college fraternity ritual. When I was in college at Gettysburg, I joined a fraternity house, and the ritual this was 1994. The ritual in my college fraternity house echoed the Masonic ritual. You put on a strange outfit. You're led around in the dark. It was interesting because I was a brother at Gettysburg of a fraternity house known as Lambda Chi Alpha, and the guy who wrote the ritual for Lambda Chi Alpha was a Freemason of all things. And when I joined the Masonic Lodge, I mean, you'll see it echoed. I mean, you'll see reflections of the 2 ritual systems. So, and anyway, getting back to this, when you join this, I joined the Scottish Rite. All my family members went into the Scottish Rite. You can join the York Rite, but the York Rite, I mean, this is not negative. The York Rite is what I would call Christian Freemasonry. It definitely has a more Christian bent to it than the Scottish Rite does. The Scottish Rite is non-denominational, but the York Rite definitely has more of a Christian influence than the Scottish Rite. The rituals of the Scottish Rite, when you join it, are more observation. You sit in an amphitheater and you watch these rituals occurring in front of you on like a theater. It's like watching a passion play almost. And what the Scottish Rite does, it further expands on the story of the Blue Lodge, is what's going on. And the degrees of the Scottish Rite are degrees 4 through 32. So let's see, there's 29 of them. There is a 33rd degree in the Scottish Rite, That is technically the highest degree, but that is honorary. You cannot solicit that. You have to be invited to join that. You cannot join it. It ends at the 32nd degree. That's as high as most Scottish Rite Masons go. You can, if you get asked to join the 33rd, that's fine, but you have to be invited. You cannot solicit it. The degree system, this throws people off. The degree system of the Scottish Rite is somewhat out of order. The actual highest degree symbolically and of importance and philosophically is actually the 13th degree of the Scottish Rite. It's what's called the Royal Arch of Enoch. This is the end of the story, essentially. This is the end of the Masonic journey. A lot of the rituals that occur afterwards, degrees like 15, 16, 17, and so on, deal with events going prior to the 13th degree. You actually go back in time. The end all of the Masonic journey, and you have to understand what's going on in the rituals, of course, which I can answer if you want me to,
sure.
is the end of the Masonic story. This is where the journey ends, and this is what I would describe as philosophically and symbolically the highest degree of Freemasonry. It's what's called the Royal Arch of Enoch. And this was the whole thesis of my first book, The Royal Arch of Enoch. Ta-da, what has the title of it. The ritual, you have to be familiar with. It's like a Grail quest, and you have to be familiar with what's going on in the Blue Lodge. In the Blue Lodge degree, in the 3rd degree, the candidate portrays this figure known as Hiram Abiff. There's Hiram's mentioned in the Bible. He's loosely based on them. He's building Solomon's temple. This is the first temple to God. And Hiram Abiff has this secret word. It's called, in the Blue Lodge, you'll hear it referred to as the lost word of a master mason. And there's a reason for that. The word is the name of God. It's the secret name of God. And it's through the pronunciation of this name that all knowledge is made available, is restored, it's through the pronunciation of this name that wisdom occurs. And Hiram Abiff has it. And as he's building this temple in the Blue Lodge, in Solomon's temple, 3 fellow crafts conspire against him to extract the word. They want the word for themselves. And here, this is the ritual. I'm describing the ritual right now. Hiram, as the candidate portrays him, he's accosted as he's leaving the temple by these 3 ruffians, and they want this name, and they say, "Give me the name, or we're going to kill you." The first guy approaches him, and he says, "No, I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to give up the word." And the one ruffian strikes him, and then Hiram goes to the next. He tries to leave, and another ruffian attacks him and says, "Give me the word." And Hiram says, "I'm not going to give you the word till the temple's complete." The morality lesson is it's teaching you to keep your word. And Hiram Abiff says, I won't give the name. I'm not going to give it. And he's killed. And the word is lost with Hiram Abiff. And you'll hear it called as the lost word of a master mason. It's the name of God. It's also what is known as the tetragrammaton. Long word there. When Hiram Abiff, he's killed. And then he's buried and resurrected. And this is allegorically symbolizing the Christ story. The resurrected God-man, Son-man is what I would call it. But when the candidate is resurrected, he has a substitute word whispered in his ear. It's not the real name of God. He's resurrected on the name of God, but it's a substitute name. When you get into the high degree bodies and you get into the Scottish Rite, the 13th degree is what's called the Royal Arch of Enoch. And this ties into the building of the 2nd temple. We've already gone through the Solomon's temple. This is now the Masons are building the 2nd temple. This is what is known as, and this is another tongue twister, what is known as the Temple of Zorobabel. And the Masons are building this temple. And as I'm going to paraphrase, I'm going to shorten this answer. As they're building this temple, they're sweeping away the rubble on the ground, and they discover a trap door. And the trapdoor springs open and the sunlight comes in, and down in this subterranean vault is Masonic treasure, is this great treasure vault. And the main things that are found down there are the pillars of Enoch, which are these 2 pillars that Enoch has inscribed this wisdom on the biblical patriarch, from his journey to the afterlife as described in the Book of Enoch, and the secret name of God, the Tetragrammaton. It's right there on this golden delta. And the whole ritual, it's like a grail quest. It's the recovery of this secret name of God. And it's this, when you understand this and its nexus to the Blue Lodge, it's this high degree that so much of the symbolism is coming out of, this high degree known as the Royal Arch of Enoch. You'll find the ritual also, it's in the Scottish Rite. You will find the ritual in the York Rite as well. It's the 7th degree in the York Rite. And it's a fascinating study because how these rituals actually came into being, these high degree bodies, is a fascinating study of its own. But it's really the end of the story for the Mason. That's where the story ends, with the recovery of this secret name. And when you really start investigating, and believe me, Dave, it took me 20 years to do this. And I just, I can do my best to bottle the answers, but you're just dealing with so many things, dealing with philosophy and religion and mystery schools, tying into all this. It's really just a fascinating study, but that's in a nutshell, I guess, would be the best way for me to answer it.
What benefit is it to anybody to join a society like this?
Well, for me, I can only tell you what I got out of it. Now, certainly there is community involvement. We, have our bingo night. We have our, barbecues as well. That's always fun. We do charity work. We do, we do field trips. We, go to historical sites. But for me, for a person to join, it's inside of them. They're going to want to or they're not. For me personally, I see it as, as a vessel of enlightenment. That's what I got out of it. It was really, for me, an enlightening experience. But not everyone gets that out of it. But that's what it was for me. But, if you just wanted to get into whatever its benefits, well, it is a brotherhood. You're going to have social events. You're going to meet other people. You're going to meet very interesting people. You're going to be able to go to, we have parties, we have barbecues. Like I said, we have our bingo nights as well. Not everything is the occult. But it's just a great organization. It's a great body. It's a great fraternity. And, I benefited from it tremendously, but I'll be the first to admit that it's not for everybody. Some people join and don't really like it, and they don't pay their dues, and they leave, or they go through the first ritual and they think, oh, it's not for me, and they leave. It's really what I would say is it's really for the individual person to join. I wouldn't, if the person wants to join, they'll want to join. Trying to talk someone into joining who really isn't interested, that usually doesn't work out too well.
Normally, I save questions from our audience until hour number 2, but they're really building up here, and this really goes to show that you're providing a lot of information that gets our audience started. Do you mind if I ask a couple of our audience questions?
No, go ahead.
All right, let's start with Everett here. He is asking, we hear about the Scottish Rite Order of Masonry most often, but are there any other rites that are still relevant?
Sure, absolutely. The Scottish Rite is. The York Rite is very relevant. That is another high degree body in the United States. That's really an American thing. The York Rite. The York Rite is what I would describe as Christian. The Scottish Rite is probably more popular than the York Rite because the York Rite has more of a Christian bent to it. And what do I mean by that? The end all body of the York Rite is the Knights Templar. That is the ending body of the York Rite is the Knights Templar. And in order to join the Knights Templar, you have to do two things. One is you have to be exalted to the Royal Arch of Enoch in the York Rite, and you have to be a Christian. You have to, in order to join the Templars, you have to swear allegiance to Jesus Christ. If you do not do that, if you are Jewish or do not want to do that, you're probably not going to join the York Rite. You probably find the Scottish Rite a little more appealing. So yes, there is the Scottish Rite. There is the York Rite. There are other Masonic bodies that that are out there. The one in Baltimore, the one that my lodge is really popular with, is another. It's not a high. It's not a degree system, but it's a Masonic body called Yed's Grotto. That's very popular here in Baltimore, especially in the lodge I'm in. There are other Masonic groups, the Tall Cedars of Lebanon, certainly the Shriners. Excuse me. So, yeah, the Scottish Rite is probably the best well known, but the one right up there with it would be the York Rite. So that would be my answer.
Let's get to Bob's question. And Bob is asking, he has heard that there are more than 33 degrees of Freemasonry, that it actually goes to a full circle of 360 degrees. Is this true?
No, this is false. The end of the degree is the 33rd degree. There was a body of Masonic rituals known as the Rites of Memphis Mizraim that went beyond the 33rd degree. I believe they went up to degrees 180. This is what also is known as Egyptian Masonry. This is not recognized by any Masonic body. When you join a Blue Lodge of Masonries, this is degrees 1, 2, and 3. When you join the 3rd degree, one of the things you swear never to join is what is called clandestine Masonry. And what is clandestine Masonry? These are Masonic organizations that are not recognized by the State Grand Lodge as Freemasonry. So groups such as, or bodies such as the York Rite and the Scottish Rite are recognized. Things like the Shriners or Yed's Grotto, that would be recognized. These, and certainly you can join other fraternal orders that are not necessarily Masonic, things like the Odd Fellows or the OTO, but you can't join anything holding itself out as Masonry, quote unquote, that has not been authenticated or recognized by a State Grand Lodge. Anything over the 33rd, such as these Rites of Memphis Mizraim, these are defunct, and this would not be recognized by a State Grand Lodge, so this would be clandestine Masonry. So if anyone is out there conferring these degrees, this is just being done ad hoc, and this would carry no authority whatsoever within Freemasonry proper.
Right. All right, let's get to Craig's question. He is asking, what do you learn about the Great White Lodge?
The what?
Great White Lodge?
I don't know what that is.
Well, then we move on. It's just that simple. And he is asking then, when you were talking earlier about the first temple, would that not be the tabernacle?
Well, it gets into, that's funny you mentioned the Ark of the Covenant, because the first temple of God is Solomon's temple. The tabernacle was what Moses and them were carrying the Ark of the Covenant around in. But the Ark of the Covenant is fascinating because that actually turns up in the York Rite as the vessel that carries the Tetragrammaton on it, the name of God. And the Ark of the Covenant, it ties into this because this ties into a lot of Jewish mysticism surrounding this, but it also ties into because at a certain point in time, the Ark of the Covenant on this degree certificate is replaced with a rising sun, and this ties into a lot of solar iconography as well. But the Blue Lodge, the ritual is the first temple of God, King Solomon's temple, which is what the first degree ritual revolves around. The high degree ritual revolves around the building of the second temple, which is known as the Temple of Zorobabel. Zorobabel is a Jewish governor. This ties into the history that's being told in this high degree ritual is the Jews are in exile in Babylon, and a Persian monarch known as Cyrus the Great is dispersing some of the Jewish people back to the Holy Land to build the second temple. And the guy he puts in charge of this is this Jewish governor known as Zorobabel. His name literally means the heart of Babylon. And he returns to the holy temple, the site, Temple Mount, to construct the second temple. And this is what the high degree bodies are encompassing, this second degree ritual, this building of the second temple. And it ties into this also this Babylonian influence as well. This is actually another book I'm writing right now, but that's also interesting.
Let's get to Bill's question. He is saying he has actually heard in some Freemason lodges that they're actually fast-tracking degrees due to lower membership numbers. Is this actually happening?
Yes, I have heard this as well. They do sometimes fast track degrees. It depends on the lodge. It just varies from lodge to lodge. And the way it works is, the way the fast tracking works is, it has to do with the catechism. When I had to, the way it's supposed to be done properly is the catechism is supposed to be learned orally. You're not supposed to write anything down. So I had to go and learn this thing orally, where they would repeat it to me, and I just had to memorize it orally. And it's very time consuming. And why? What they'll do is to make it easier is, like, so for example, when I did the entered apprentice degree, what they'll do is they'll wait till they like ritualize like 2 or 3 other people. And then, so I'll be in a catechism class with like 2, 3, 4 other people, and they divide up the questions. So instead of me having to learn, I can't remember how many catechism questions there are, but just let's hypothetically say there's 30. So instead of me having to memorize 30, if there's 3 other people, if there's me and 2 other people, I only have to learn 10 questions. So it makes it a whole lot easier. When I was doing this, when I went through it in 1997, I got the entered apprentice degree in May. It took me 4 months to learn the catechism, to memorize it, and then go through it. And then I didn't get the 3rd degree until September. So, you know, it took longer. Now, the way you could fast track this would be as if you just gave me the catechism written down. I mean, I could probably have that memorized in a day or two. I mean, then, you know, I could go to the lodge meeting next, you know, in 2 or 3 weeks, you know, and learn it flat. So, yeah, I mean, that does happen. I'm not going to say it doesn't. It just depends on the lodge. Some lodges are more finicky than others. Some do fast track it. You know, it's just up to the lodge, the master, and the lodge officers how they want to do it. Like, that was how I did it. It's funny you mention that, because a buddy of mine right now is going through it, and they're fast tracking him. He got the entered apprentice degree a couple months ago, and I think they gave him the material to memorize. And if that's the case, then that would definitely expedite the experience, no question about it.
All right, let's move on to questions here. Trip is asking, we know Masons had their hand in many temples, i.e. India and the pyramids. Why did Masons leave hints and signs that may point towards extraterrestrials?
That's a great question. You know, well, when you're getting into things like the pyramids and things like that, this is more of a legendary history of Freemasonry. But there actually is, it's funny you mention extraterrestrials, because extraterrestrials are actually mentioned in one Masonic monitor, believe it or not. They're not mentioned as extraterrestrials per se, but what it does reference, it's a Masonic monitor known as the Illustrations of Freemasonry. It was written by a man named Thomas Smith Webb, who is very critical to United States Freemasonry. He is the driving force behind the York Rite of Masonry. He's very, very, very important. And in this Masonic treatise, he talks about there being a plurality of worlds out there. I may be misquoting him. It may be an infinity of worlds. He's getting this from the Dominican friar Giordano Bruno. And he says it in the context of, well, we know, and a lot of founding fathers here in the United States believed in this as well, that there was this, you know, that there was life on other planets. And the context they were saying it was that this life, I believe the language he uses, he says, these plurality of worlds are under the aegis of the great architect of the universe. And that's the language in the lodge for God. That's the word you hear all the time, the great architect of the universe. So yeah, you know, and this is actually mentioned in a Masonic literature, extraterrestrial life of all things. So this was the Masons, a lot of Masonic teachings and philosophies come out of the Enlightenment, out of the Renaissance, themes of Christian Kabbalah, Hebrew Kabbalah, mysticism, the occult. Giordano Bruno, the Dominican friar, was one of the great, what I would call proto-Masonic thinkers. So to find extraterrestrial life mentioned in a Masonic literature, wouldn't be surprising. When you get into actual architecture, things like the pyramids, this is somewhat speculative, of course. We don't know. There are legendary histories of the Masons, and some of this is legendary. Now, you know, it depends on what you want to believe. when Masonry was founded in 1717 and 1721, a Presbyterian minister named James Anderson wrote the constitutions of the Freemasonry, of the Freemasons, and this is the bylaws that he laid out. And in this monitor is the legendary history of Masons, where he takes it all the way back to the biblical stoneworkers building things like the Temple of Babel, things like that, and he gets into the pyramids as well. And then he gets into the Gothic cathedrals and things like that. And, he basically traces Masonry's origins back to these biblical stoneworkers. Then there's this great split that occurs in 1737, where this man named Andrew Michael the Chevalier Ramsay issues this oration to the Masonic lodges. And this is where the high degrees come from. This is what births the Scottish Rite and the York Rite. He has this oration. He says, I don't disagree with Anderson, with Masons being the stone workers and the builders and things like that. He says, but in this oration, he says, but that's not the real origins of Masonry. He said Masonry is Roman Catholic. He said, in fact, he says Masonry is the true Roman Catholic religion. He said, and Masonry is born out of this Roman Catholic mystical warrior monk class known as the Knights Templar. He says, and in this, he said, when the Templars were in the Holy Land, they were introduced to the mystery schools, the teachings of, these ancient mystery religions, the mysteries of Osiris, Mithras, Pythagoras, the Eleusinian mysteries, the Sufis, and they transported these ancient mystery schools back to Europe. And it's from this that Freemasonry is born out of. And it's this oration that births the high degrees of Freemasonry, the Scottish Rite and the York Rite. Fascinating study of it in itself. But yeah, just to wrap up, yeah, there is definitely extraterrestrial influence or mention in Masonic literature.
And on that note, I'm going to get you to hold on, Robert. Robert W. Sullivan the Fourth is our guest tonight. You can check out his website, robertwsullivaniv.com, if you want to check out his books. He is an award-winning author, theologian, lawyer, and we're going to talk more Freemasonry, about the Masons, get into Hollywood, symbolism, and so much more. We're going to continue with your questions right after the break as well. We will get to them. Thank you so much for listening to Spaced Out Radio, hour number 2, right around the corner. We'll be right back.
365 days a year, we're in the field, investigating UFO sightings, talking to alien abductees, and visiting secret military locations like Area 51. We're UFO Seekers, official partner of Spaced Out Radio. Follow our daily search for the truth at ufoseekers.com or like us on social media. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
From coast to coast to coast, Blacklight Uncharted is taking on the paranormal across Canada. From ghostly hauntings to the UFOs flying above in conjunction with MUFON Canada, we're closely investigating what's going on in the northern skies and checking out the apparitions that walk among us. Check out our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com. We want to know your thoughts, we want to hear your experiences, and we want you to share your stories. The answers are out there, and we intend to find them.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
It's paranormal news at its finest. Welcome to The Encounter. At spacedoutradio.com, The Encounter online is SOR's trusted news source for everything weird and strange going on around the world. This is news editor Eric Markham. Our team of journalists are scouring the planet for those strange stories that rarely make the mainstream. No fear-mongering or fake news here. Head over to spacedoutradio.com and encounter The Encounter.
Want to learn more about aliens, cover-ups, conspiracies, cryptids, and the paranormal? All you have to do is tune in S4 as we take over the Spaced Out Radio night, starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, each and every Saturday night, right after Spaced Out Saturdays. Hi there, this is Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. Join me, Corey Ruiz, and friends as we discuss the hot topics of the night. It's fun, entertaining, and as dark as the night. find us at spacedoutradio.com.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
Are you an experiencer? Have you had run-ins with strange creatures you can't explain? ETs, Dogman, Bigfoot, werewolves? They're enough to scare the daylights out of anyone. Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski from your Cop. And on the last Monday of every month, you can listen to me and the host, Dave Scott, talk about the weird and the strange being reported on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going to bring my investigations and sources, you bring your experiences, and we'll figure out the rest together. Strange Days on Spaced Out Radio. Come tune us in at spacedoutradio.com.
Want a place to share your experiences without feeling judged? We have the place for you. If you've experienced sightings or contact with ETs, ghosts, cryptids, or UFOs, and you'd like someone to confidentially look into the matter, just fill out an SOR Sightlines report. Our goal is to help you get the answers you need to the experiences you've had with our professional team of researchers. Your information stays 100% confidential. The SOR Sightlines report. Fill out your experience today only at spacedoutradio.com.
Psychic Sundays, spiritual communication, ET contact, Sasquatch in your backyard. We will have it all on Cosmic Passport with me, Elizabeth Anglin. Each Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, at spacedoutradio.com, I will take you on a journey of enlightenment. The goal is learning from the soul on out. We'd love it if you joined our experience, Cosmic Passport, heard Sundays at spacedoutradio.com.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
From British Columbia to Northern California, Pacific North Weird has Cascadia covered. Check out our feature videos at spacedoutradio.com, where I, Vincent Zunza, and my super sleuth partner Alexandra Sullivan track down the weird and strange stories from around the Pacific Northwest, from Bigfoot to Mel's Hole and everything in between. This is what makes life exciting. So why report the normal when we can report the Pacific North Weird right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
Welcome to Spaced Out Saturdays with me, Dave Cruz from Beyond the Strange. Our weekly feature on spacedoutradio.com will take you around the world discussing everything from the paranormal to the latest conspiracies from the top guests in their fields. We won't leave any story uncovered. Spaced Out Saturdays at spacedoutradio.com starting 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Welcome back to the second hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the program, we talk paranormal television. Jack Kenna is going to join us. You've probably seen him on a lot of the television ghost hunting shows. He will join us at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans, and over 160 countries around the world. We are also live on KTLK, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas, and if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Pyrheliometer. Pyrheliometer is your password. Make sure you say it wisely and use it wisely, Space Travelers, as Bill sets a password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, you could do so on Twitter, at Spaced Out Radio. Use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio if you want to connect live with me during the show as well. You could give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can also join us for live chat in the SOR Space Travelers group. We're on Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR. We have a brand new YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio. Not Spaced Out Radio Show anymore, so make sure if you've subscribed to that one, you can unsubscribe, go on to our new one, because we'd really appreciate that. That's where all our new archives are. And, of course, our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including joining the SOR Space Travelers Club for $5 a month. You could shop at the Spaced Out Radio store. You can also rock out to some Bumblefoot. Watch great videos from Contact TV and UFO Seekers. As well, we have our news section up and running, stories coming every single day. It's called The Encounter Online. Make sure you also give that page a like on Facebook as well. Tonight we are talking with Robert W. Sullivan the Fourth. He is a 32nd degree Freemason. He is a best-selling author. His website is robertwsullivan.iv.com. And we welcome him back to Spaced Out Radio for hour number 2. Robert, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thanks, Dave, for having me on. Let me just explain real quick. My name is Robert W. Sullivan the Fourth. So, that's why the IV's there. Robert Sullivan was taken a long time ago when I was registering that website, so I just went with my full name. But yeah, Dave, thanks for having me on, and great show so far. Really having a great time, and much appreciated to be here.
We're appreciating it. And I was saying to Robert during the break here, guys, sometimes we lose track on time. I almost forgot that we were coming up to a commercial break. That hour went so fast on the first one. But we're going to continue with the audience questions here, if you don't mind, and then we'll get into some other subjects here, because the audience is fired right up, and we want to make sure that they get their questions in as well. From Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio, Muji Boy is asking, how many Freemasons are actually real-life Masons?
Oh, like are actually, I don't have a percentage of that. I don't know. It's a good question. Certainly, like civil engineers and construction and things like that. Yeah, that's those are what are known as operative Masons. Those are the actual civil engineers, city planners. People like me who are not that, we're known as speculative Masons. It's a good question. I don't know. I couldn't give you a percentage of how many there are versus speculative. I've never really looked into it, to be honest with you. And just real quick, Dave, if I could just go back before the break.
Please do.
Someone was asking a question about a Great White Lodge. I Googled that during the break, and the only thing I could see was something tying into Madame Blavatsky's Theosophy movement. I know it as Theosophy, and certainly I'm very familiar with that, with Aleister Crowley and McGregor Mathers and that whole crowd. So, that's, Blavatsky's Theosophy is what I would describe as neo-Gnosticism. Very important when understanding the movie The Wizard of Oz, because that's really the Theosophy movement on screen, as it were.
And we're going to get into the Easter eggs and Hollywood signs and theology and everything along those lines in hour number 3. But let's get to more audience questions here, and this comes from BTO. He is asking, Robert, can you discuss the difference between House and Freemasons?
Between House?
I guess House Masons and Freemasons? Is there a difference?
I've never heard the term. I've been involved with Masonry for 20 years. No, I don't know the answer to that one.
All right. Continue on here. During the initiation process, do initiates have to read the Bible backwards?
No. There is none of that. There is you swear the Bible is on the altar, which you swear you take your oath on. But that's it. There's no reading the Bible backwards or anything like that.
And we'll give them the hat trick here. There's a lot of rumors and conjecture that groups like the Freemasons are factions of the Illuminati or NWO. Is there anything concerning that?
Well, the Illuminati was a real group, and there is an Illuminati influence, especially with the United States. They were real. They did exist. I don't believe this a group. You certainly have globalist organizations like Bilderberg, Trilateral, things like that, but there is no, I've been involved with Masonry 20 years. I've never seen anything coming close to any sort of Illuminati-style group. I can tell you this is in 2017, Masons who talk about the Illuminati, this is usually done tongue-in-cheek. No Mason believes this exists anymore. I certainly don't. If you came into a Blue Lodge of Masons claiming to be in the Illuminati, you would probably be laughed at. You would see a giant hook come out from behind the curtain. Certainly, the Bavarian Illuminati of Adam Weishaupt is very important. They are critical to understanding Masonic history, and it is a very fascinating thing what they were up to. But by all accounts, they seem to be completely defunct by the early, 1800s, I would say. No, I talk about the Illuminati and the Royal Arch of Enoch. They are very critical in the context of the foundation of the United States. That is irrefutable.
What about the fact, then, that many people believe this is some sort of cult of Satanism, including many in the religious right?
Yeah, this is made up. This was a fiction made up by a guy named William Guy Carr. It stems from two things. It stems from a book by a guy named Albert Pike, who was a 33rd degree Freemason. He was the Grand Sovereign Commander of the Scottish Rite from 1859 to his death in 1891. And in 1871, he published a book called The Morals and Dogma of Scottish Rite. The book has nothing to do with Freemasonry, believe it or not. It is a book on comparative symbolism and comparative religion. And he ties into Masonry. He says, well, when Masonry uses this symbol, and then he goes back in time and says, to the cult of Mithras, it was this, and to the Pythagoreans, it meant this, and in the Eleusinian mystery schools, it meant this, and in the religion of the Vikings, it meant this. That's essentially what he does. And in this book, he compares the planet Venus to Lucifer, quite correctly. He says that he says, why are you calling Venus Lucifer? He says, strange name to give the Prince of Darkness. Lucifer. Is it Lucifer that bears the light? Doubt it not. What he's saying is, is it Venus that heralds the coming sunrise? Doubt it not. Venus equates to Lucifer because it appears often in the eastern sky before the sunrise as false light, or sort of a fallen light. It's not the true light. The true light, of course, is the sun. So he compares Lucifer to the planet Venus. Well, of course, every anti-Mason in the world picks up on this and thinks, oh, this is Luciferianism or anything like that. It is not. It's like I said, it's a book on comparative religion. He could have just as easily have said, is it Venus that heralds the light? Doubt it not. No one probably would have cared. Pike had the P.T. Barnum gene in him and, wanted some notoriety, wanted, this to be talked about. If he had said Venus, no one would care about this. This was picked up on years later by a hoaxer named Leo Taxel, who wrote, I think, a monitor called The Mysteries of the Freemasons. And he gets into this, that it's all Luciferianism. This is a hoax also. And again, was, this idea that the Illuminati was around and were devil worshippers. This is completely fake. This was picked up on, unfortunately, by a guy named William Guy Carr in the 30s and 40s. And this is where this whole idea of the Illuminati still being around, it being devil worshippers, it's all fiction. I've been involved with it for 20 years. I guess if it's there, I've never seen it. Another thing that's fiction is there's apparently this Albert Pike letter out there predicting 3 world wars. This is fantasy also. This was made up by a guy, by Guy Carr. Again, this letter doesn't exist. People quote this letter all over the place. If you ask them to show the actual letter, they can't find it. And the reason for that is because it was made up. The Illuminati in a historical context is very important. But, the whole thing of it being devil worshippers and stuff like that, this is just conspiracy fantasy.
Thank you for filling that in. I really do appreciate you doing that. Let's get to Everett's question here, because I think it's a very important question. There's a lot of people out there who believe Freemasonry has gone to great efforts to keep its rituals and information secret. Why are you allowed to speak about it?
Well, that's a good question. You are allowed to write books on Masonic history, on Masonic philosophy, on Masonic ritual. This is allowed. You are allowed to do this. What they don't like you talking about, and I mean, you hear this all the time. I mean, when you join a Masonic lodge, you swear you're not going to divulge the secrets under these gruesome penalties. That's true. That is, that you're going to get disemboweled or your head cut off or your heart ripped out. That's just a few of them, the names that I just recall off the top of my head. That's true. This is allegorical. No Mason would take that seriously. I mean, but it is, it's just warning you, to keep secret. It's to keep your word. What they don't like you talking about are what I would call the tokens and signs of recognition. So like the way you can recognize a Mason, the hand grip, the tokens, the signs that go on inside the lodge, the passwords. This is the stuff they don't want you talking about. That's what's really frowned upon. In my book, I don't write down the passwords or tokens that I would not feel comfortable with. What I did, and this is as close as I got, was I wrote down the initials. That's as close as I would go to it. That's what's really frowned upon. But many Masons, and you were instructed on this, you are instructed when you join to study the craft, to study its history and Masonic literature and writing books on its history, its philosophy, its symbolism, its symbolic interpretation. That is certainly not prohibited.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I thought it would be because, I mean, you always hear so many people who are so silent about it is that they keep the secrecy alive. I remember one guy I worked with very fluently for about 18 months. You could talk to him about it, but if you asked him any questions, he would zip right up because it was like part of the code. You just don't talk about it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the Mason. Everybody's different. Some Masons like to keep their membership more secret than others. Some members don't like to talk about it. I wear the Masonic rings. I identify it. I wear 2 gaudy Masonic rings, so I identify myself. I'm not the first person to discuss Masonic ritual, philosophy, and symbolism. A number of other Freemasons have. Manly P. Hall, Albert Pike, Albert Mackey. These are all well-learned Freemasons who wrote books about Masonic literature and history and symbolism. So I guess it just depends on the Freemasons. Some are more tight-lipped than others. I wouldn't divulge the passwords. If you ask me right now, I would say I'm not going to answer. I've had that happen. But as far as the ritual and the history and the philosophy, I wrote a 700-page book about it. Most Masons, not all, like it. I've been invited to speak at Masonic lodges, which I have. So I guess it just depends on the Mason.
Let's get to more questions here. This one from Trip. He is saying, what's the difference between groups like the Masons and, say, a faction of the Skull and Bones that the Bushes are famous for? Are they connected?
Right. That's a good question. The Skull and Bones, there are these groups out there like Skull and Bones and college fraternities and sororities, which is what Skull and Bones is what I would call as Masonic-like. Categories that, there were groups that would fall into this would be, like Skull and Bones, like a college fraternity house, like Lambda Chi Alpha. Everyone knows Skull and Bones. There are other secret societies, fraternal orders at Yale. Scroll and Key is another one. No one knows that one. Groups like the OTO, which I would describe as Masonic-like. There's a fraternal order. It's completely separate from Masons called the Odd Fellows. Skull and Bones is not under the aegis of Freemasonry. I would call it Masonic-like. It has, Masonic-like rituals. Clearly, the guy who founded it, William Huntington Russell, was influenced by Freemasonry. He went into Masonic lodges when he was over in Europe. Some of these were holdover groups, that still had the Illuminati bent to them. Another group that was like the Illuminati, these high degrees, or esoteric orders of Masonry. Another one was called the Rite of Strict Observance. And clearly Huntington Russell seems to have been influenced by this when he founded Skull and Bones. Skull and Bones is not under a Masonic jurisdiction. So where's Yale University? What is it in Connecticut, or I believe in Connecticut. So if it was attached to Freemasonry, it would be under the Grand Lodge of Connecticut. It is not. So it is a group that I would call Masonic-like, but it is not attached to Freemasonry. But there's a lot of groups out there that are Masonic-like, and they're very important. I get into this again in my book. College sororities and fraternities are very important. Skull and Bones is one other one. Groups like the OTO. Interesting. But, I would categorize them as Masonic-like, not necessarily attached to Masonry proper.
Did Masons build the Library of Alexandria, and did they take all the ancient books of knowledge and hide them for themselves?
Not to my knowledge. When you're getting into what Masons actually built, that's a good question. When you get into the great wonders of the world and things like that, it's more of a legendary thing. Things like the Tower of Babel. There is encoded, I believe this to be true, because this is what I talk about in the book, lost wisdom, lost mystery school, philosophies that you can find encoded in Masonic ritual. The whole thesis of the first book was that the Royal Arch of Enoch book, my entire thesis of that book was that the high degree ritual, one of the reasons why it's so important was that the high degree ritual, when it was being developed in France in 1740s, 1750s, the Royal Arch of Enoch ceremonial includes components of the lost book of Enoch, one Enoch, Ethiopian Enoch, which should not be happening because when that ritual is being developed in the 1740s, 1750s, the Book of Enoch, one Enoch, was lost to history, lost to the West. It wasn't until 1773 that a man named James Bruce returned to Europe with 3 copies, and even then it wasn't even translated into English until 1821. Yet this ritual was encoding elements of that book, so that book must have been out there somewhere. Someone must have had access to it. I don't believe the Masons have a secret library or anything. It's possible. You get into the Knights Templar, certainly with hidden treasure, and things like that. That's very possible. I talk about that in the book. But Masonry today, I don't know if they have a secret library anywhere. Building the 7 Wonders, again, that's part of the legendary history. Certainly you look at, the Library of Alexandria, or excuse me, the library. I'm going off on a tangent here. But when you get into the things like the great wonders of the world, the Tower of Babel, this is all part of the legendary history. I don't know if the Masons today have any sort of secret library. I've been involved with it for 20 years. I believe in the rituals there is encoded lost history and lost important symbolic knowledge. But what I would say, just to wrap up, is it's really one of those things where the ritual is really telling you a lot, but it's, again, up to the individual Mason to kind of figure it out for themselves. It's not going to be given to you. At least it wasn't, when I went through it, you'll go through it and you'll see it and you'll understand it, but you got to read the books about it and read the, really the esoteric books about it. The guys like Albert Pike and Albert Mackey, that you'll really begin to connect the dots on this stuff.
All right, continuing on here, Craig is asking, can you explain the difference in views of the Tree of Life by York and the Scottish?
Well, I don't know if there's really a difference. I would say that Tree of Life is Kabbalah, and you have the main one is Hebrew Kabbalah. This would be spelled with the letter K. In the Renaissance, there was a phenomenon known as Christian Kabbalah. This is spelled with the letter C, and this is an attempt to Christianize the Hebrew Kabbalah, where the name of God, instead of it being Yahweh, would be Jesus Christ. So, that would be one of the main differences between it. When you get into Kabbalah, I would say you definitely have a Christian mystical influence upon Freemasonry. That's irrefutable. With Hebrew Kabbalah, and Kabbalah, I guess in general, would probably be a better way to answer it, you will definitely find a Kabbalistic influence upon Freemasonry. I mean, when you're looking at it, I mean, you have the 22 paths, the 10 Sephirot, 22 plus 10 is 32. So this is mirroring the Scottish Rite degrees. Then you have a hidden Sephirot known as Doth. You add that in, then you've got your 33rd degree. So yeah, there is a Kabbalistic influence upon Freemasonry, Jewish mysticism. You're dealing with the lost name of God, the Ark of the Covenant. So yeah, this all ties into Masonry. And again, this is one of the reasons why I love the subject matter so much. It encompasses, mysticism, Christianity, Judaism, paganism, even, Islam. That's a fascinating study. And the ancient mysteries and the occult. So yeah, and Kabbalah, that definitely plays a role in this, no doubt about it.
Continuing on here, Craig is asking, was the Otto or Oto? I apologize on the pronunciation there. Mm-hmm. That's OTO, Otto or Oto.
That's the OTO, right? Okay.
Okay, Go ahead. Was it not based on ET communication, and how do Masons view the OTO?
Yeah, well, the OTO is sort of a mystical blend of Freemasonry, and it's more, this is the, Aleister Crowley secret society of Theodore Roos and people like that. It's not, their rituals are Masonic-like. They actually do a Royal Arch of Enoch degree working, believe it or not. Obviously they get into much more mystical, with conjurations and tarot and astrology, although you will find astrology in Masonry as well, but it's more encoded. It's not on its surface. But with the OTO, it's a group that, this also involves controversial doctrines such as sex magic. You won't find that in Masonry, of course. But as far as Masonry viewing it, it doesn't attach itself to Freemasonry. Again, it's one of these groups that I would call as Masonic-like. To my knowledge, there is no, since the OTO doesn't call itself Freemasonry, it's not clandestine. A Mason could join it. As far as I know, it wouldn't be prohibited. It would, I don't know any Masons who have joined it. In fact, I don't know any members of the OTO. I know I'm here in Baltimore, Maryland, and I know there is an OTO lodge in downtown Baltimore. It's actually called the William Blake Lodge, of all things. I am not a member of it. I've been asked about it, but I am not a member of it. I actually do not. I've studied the OTO. I know all about it, but I've never joined it. It's not up my alley, I don't think, and I don't know anyone in it as well. But it's a group that's Masonic-like, and to my knowledge, I don't think there's any prohibition. I can't imagine there would be for a Mason to join it. But I would caution just to say that know what you're getting into. It's definitely more controversial. I don't think the OTO is for everybody. There are aspects of it that I would caution a person about joining it before they did. And this could be found out readily online as well.
Going back to a question from Tripp here, he is asking, so before Scottish Masons, were any records kept?
Well, yes. Well, you have Masons, in England. We have a guy named Elias Ashmole who joined a lodge of Masons in England. I should point out this is a tripping point that a lot of people make. The Scottish Rite of Freemasonry has nothing to do with Scotland. I hope people are aware of that. It's French. The Scottish Rite is French in origin. The reason that it is identified with Scotland is in one of the earlier workings. It's a creation of the Jesuits. It's Roman Catholic. It has nothing to do with Scotland. It comes out of Paris, France, of all things. The reason that it associates with Scotland is, in one of the earlier Jesuit workings of this Royal Arch of Enoch ritual, in the ritual, the way it's worked today, the treasure vault, the subterranean treasure vault, is discovered by Jewish temple builders. In one of the earlier workings of the ritual, it's discovered by Scottish Knights Templar, who dedicate the temple, this treasure vault, to James VI, King of Scotland. This is how the Scottish tie-in to this is. But the Scottish Rite is actually French in origin. It's not come out of Scotland. This is a big tripping point. People don't seem to be aware of this. But there are, it's a great question, because one of the grandmother lodges of Freemasonry is the Kilwinning Lodge. This is, one of the early lodges. This is one of the lodges that ties into Rosslyn Chapel, of all things. So yeah, there are lodges in the continent of Europe, in England. We have lodge minutes from a lodge that Elias Ashmole, he's very critical to this. He was a collector of very rare antiquities. He associates with the Rosicrucianism. He's a founder of he's one of the co-founders of the Royal Society in England, and the Royal Society ties into Freemasonry big time. The Invisible College, things like that. Those are the progenitors of the Royal Society. This is all after the English Civil War. This also ties into Freemasonry, Oliver Cromwell, Charles I. So yeah, we do have lodge records prior to the actual foundation of Freemasonry in 1717.
Christoph is asking, what is taught in Blue Lodges? Can that be used in joining in the British and esoteric rites in Europe?
Say that again. Say that one more time.
What is taught in Blue Lodges, and can it be used in joining in the British and esoteric rites in Europe?
Right. Well, I guess so. What is taught in the Blue Lodge is it's instruction. You're given moral instruction based on allegory and symbolism and working tools. They use working tools, actual, like a square and compass to teach morality. I guess that's the best way I can answer it. It's what's taught in the first 2 degrees. The third degree it's taught as well, but that's really more the candidate portraying Hiram Abiff. This is your dead and resurrected God-man symbolism. As far as it joining other orders, I don't see why the knowledge couldn't be applied or even applied to everyday life. I think that's sort of the idea behind it, is that you're gonna use this new wisdom that you've been imparted with to go out and make a better world, to affect the community in a positive way. I think that's the ultimate goal of all this. So, can it be applied to other things? Yeah, I guess I don't see why not.
Why are there no female Masons, or are there?
That's a great question. Women are not allowed to join. Now, there are women lodges popping up. They are not recognized in the United States. I don't know if they will be. There's a movement underway to get them to be. I'm not familiar if the lodges are, what the rituals look like. Masonry, there's 2 reasons why women can't join. One is it's just the rules. That's the perfunctory answer. The other answer is Masonry is based on the primary symbol in Masonry is the sun. Everything in Masonry revolves around the sun. It's everywhere in Masonry. And of course, the sun is the symbol for the male. The moon is the symbol for the female. So because it's a solar brotherhood, and it's all relating to the sun. Think the Jesuits, their symbol is the sun as well. Because everything relates to the sun. It's all male. It's all masculine. There is an incorporation of the sacred feminine in the Freemasonry. It turns up in the Blue Lodge in the 3rd degree. In the 3rd degree ritual, there is a retelling The whole dead and resurrected sun man ritual is the Osirian cycle coming out of ancient Egypt with Osiris, Isis, and Horus. The third degree ritual is a retelling, reenactment of that. So there is an incorporation and inclusion of the sacred feminine. It is definitely there. And then, of course, when you get into some of the teachings in the entered apprentice degrees, you'll get into things like faith, hope, and charity, which are usually represented by a goddess. So there is placement of the sacred feminine in Masonry proper, but women can't join because of it's a solar brotherhood. Everything revolves around the sun, and it's masculine. But I know that there are movements underway. I know there are women lodges. They're not recognized. I know in some places there's underway to try to get them recognized. We'll see what happens with it. But no, as it stands right now, at least here in Baltimore, Maryland, women cannot join the Blue Lodge.
That just sounds a little bit sexist for today. But then again, there's not many strictly male groups left out there, are there?
No, when it was founded in 1717, it was all male back then. There are women Masonic bodies. The Eastern Star is one, so there are female Masonic bodies. Now, the Eastern Star, if you're a woman and you join it, you cannot hold yourself out as a Mason. It's just an auxiliary body. But again, it really ties into the ritual iconography that everything in Masonry is based on the sun. And since the sun is masculine, women can't join. That's probably the best answer I could give you.
Do you believe that you'll see a time in the near future where women will be allowed to join this, especially if they have lineage in this group? So let's say, a father has 3 daughters and he would like one of his daughters to become a Freemason. Do you see a time where that might be possible?
I'd say it's 50-50 and probably 10 years away, but I'd give it 50-50 right now.
Let's move on to Craig's question. He is asking, why did Manly P. Hall say no to practicing magic, then go ahead and do it anyways?
I guess you'd have to ask Manly P. Hall that. I like his books. I think his books are tremendous, and I really enjoy them. In fact, The Royal Arch of Enoch, my first book, I actually modeled it after 2 books, and one of them was Manly P. Hall's Secret Teachings of All Ages. The other was Pike's Morals and Dogma. Pike, Hall became a Mason later in life and became a Scottish Rite Mason later in life. I don't have an answer for that. Unfortunately, I suppose you'd have to ask Manly P. Hall why he did that. And since Hall's no longer alive, I'm just going to have to pass on that, I suppose.
Oh, fair and square. Absolutely. Community-wise, we see a lot of these groups trying to get out there to help charities, to help, telethons. We see it with the Shriners annually. A lot of people believe that they do this type of event in order to try and keep their name in high esteem or to change a reputation that they have. Do you believe that it's all about reputation rebuilding on an annual basis when they do these events?
Well, I think they do it. Freemasonry has always been a charitable organization since its inception. I think it really helps the community. I don't think Masons see themselves as negative. I don't think they have to rebuild anything. There was a lot of anti-Masonry going on back in the 1820s here, but I think that's a history. You have to understand the history of Masonry to understand where anti-Masonry comes from. But I don't see Masons today, myself included, don't see ourselves as negative. So we don't see a need to have to rebuild ourselves in the public eye or anything. Doing charity work, things like that. That comes with the territory. Masonry has always been a charitable organization. So no, I don't see it as having to rebuild anything. Now, when there was a backlash against Masonry in the 1820s, and Masonry took a big hit out of it, and it took years for the fraternity to recover. And a lot of the conspiracy comes out of this because it was an actual conspiracy. But unfortunately, Masonry was really took a big shot out of this, but it has rebuilt. But one of the I'll just end up on this when one of the side effects of this this anti-Masonry movement in the 1820s here in the United States was Masonry distanced itself from any sort of esoteric teachings. This seems to be coming back in vogue right now, and a lot of Masons often frowned upon this because they thought it fueled the conspiracy world, when it really didn't. It was actually very interesting, and it was actually not negative at all. It was actually very positive. Masons today, I don't see, as a Mason myself, I don't think it's, a reputation thing. Most Masons see it as very positive, and, doing charity work is part of Masonry. So, that I guess would be the answer to it.
Have people been kicked out of the Freemasons? And if so, what would cause someone to be removed?
Sure. There's been a criminal activity would cause you to be excluded. Any sort of criminal conduct would cause you to be thrown out. Certainly, if you lied to get in, that could cause you to be thrown out, and as well as not paying dues. If you cease paying your dues, you will be prohibited from coming. Certainly, if you restart paying your dues, then you can come again. But things that would exclude you from Masonry would be criminal activity, and certainly if you lied and it was a major lie, like for example, I'm just thinking, like if they asked you if you had a criminal background and you lied about it, then that would probably exclude you or would throw you out if they ever found out. That would probably do it.
Now, when you say criminal activity, are we talking murder? Are we talking theft? Are we talking embarrassing the lodge and the people involved? Giving away the secrets?
Right. We wouldn't be talking speeding tickets or anything like that. I mean, we would be talking crimes of moral turpitude, fraud, spousal abuse, rape, murder, things like that. Things like traffic tickets, traffic violations, a misdemeanor, a breach of contract, a civil violation, that you would probably be okay with. But it would be the higher crimes that would get you in trouble.
Catalina is asking, is there a connection with Jesuits and Masons?
Of course. Jesuits created the high degrees of Freemasonry. It was part of the Counter-Reformation, where the Jesuits were charged with destroying Western civilization, trying to overthrow the English monarchy. England in 1717, when Masonry was founded, was very Whiggery, was anti-Catholic. In 1701, you had the passage of the Act of Settlement, prohibiting Roman Catholics from sitting on the English throne. Of course, you had Oliver Cromwell in the English Civil War, where you chopped off Charles I's head because he was married to a Catholic wife. The Jesuits tried to assassinate Queen Elizabeth I. They were behind the gunpowder plot, which we just celebrated on November 5th, 1605, where the Jesuits tried to blow up James I in the English Parliament. Then in 1666, they burnt London to the ground in the Great Fire of London. In 1717, you have Freemasonry coming along. It's very Protestant. It's very Whiggery. It's anti-Catholic. And the Jesuits were charged with destroying Western civilization. So in 1737, you have the birth of the high degrees, which are Roman Catholic. They're very Jesuit. They involve things of Christian Kabbalism, the restoration of the lost name of God. And the entire high degree bodies was a movement to restore the Stuart pretenders, the Roman Catholic Stuarts, back to the throne of England. Now, by the time the high degrees entered the United States, they entered piecemeal. It's what's called the Rite of Perfection. It was developed by the Society of Jesus in the 1740s, 1750s to restore the Stuart pretenders back to the throne of England. There are some Masons who disagree with that. If you read all the Masonic literature, Albert Mackey, they all talk about this. I talk about it in the book. And by the time they reach the United States, the Jesuit influence is kind of out of it. They're actually piecemealed into the United States through Haiti, of all things. But yeah, you definitely have a decided Jesuit influence with Masonry. I mean, the symbol of the Jesuits is the sun. You can look at the Jesuits as a as a spiritual order, where you have the Masons as a secular order of hermits. And again, the sun is the most important symbol as in Freemasonry. probably lifting that maybe perhaps from the Society of Jesus. You have also, even in the United States, one of the big families of Masons who are helping found the United States are the Carroll family. Charles Carroll of Carrollton, who is Roman Catholic. Daniel Carroll, his land actually was the property that the Washington, D.C. sits upon. And, of course, his brother was John Carroll, who was the first archbishop in the United States. He was a Jesuit priest. So, a lot of nexus between the Freemasons and the Jesuits, and certainly within the high degrees. It was all being developed as part of the Counter-Reformation. If you're interested in that, by all means, read the Royal Arch of Enoch. That's a fascinating history, something I really like investigating and studying and talking about.
As a Freemason, are you allowed to enter any Masonic temple around the world?
The answer to that is yes, but you usually have to. It's not, you just can't walk one in. You usually have to talk to somebody, and then they will maybe do a little brief investigation. You probably want to have your little membership card with you. But yes, you can. You can visit other Masonic lodges. I would say you can't just walk on in. You'd want to get permission first. You'd want to talk to a lodge officer. But you'd get granted admission. That would be allowed. Yes, you can go into other lodges that you are not a member of, but you shouldn't just walk in. You should be polite and just ask first. But yes, they'll let you in.
I was surprised. One of our former guests from Detroit, a paranormal investigator named Todd, his team was actually allowed to investigate the paranormal in a Masonic lodge in Detroit. I was surprised that the lodge would allow this, and so was he. Is there a tie at all between the Masons and the things that happen in the paranormal?
Well, I mean, I'm not surprised that they didn't let him in. As long as there's no rituals going on, I mean, you can go into a Masonic lodge building. If you wanted to go in and you booked an appointment just to look around, yeah, I mean that wouldn't be prohibited. What would be prohibited is if the rituals were going on or an actual lodge meeting was occurring, then you couldn't go in. But if that wasn't occurring, yeah, you could go in. I mean, I'm assuming he's going in at night. The Detroit Lodge, if it's the Grand Lodge, that's a very impressive building, so that wouldn't surprise me at all. Ties between Masonry and the paranormal. I mean, I don't know. I guess that's sort of, our Masonic lodge is haunted. That would be an individual thing. I guess your guest you had on thought there was something going on, or someone thought there was something going on inside this Masonic temple. That wouldn't surprise me, I guess. But as far as, Masonic temples being haunted or anything like that, I guess it would just be on the individual Masonic temple. I've never myself experienced any paranormal activity inside a lodge building. I have experienced paranormal activity, but it has occurred outside the lodge building, and it actually occurred before I became a Freemason. I also have a UFO experience, but that occurred before I became a Freemason. So as far as a Masonic lodge complex being haunted or having a paranormal manifestation in it, I guess it would just depend on the lodge and the brothers experiencing it. But that would not surprise me. A lot of Masonic lodges have deep histories, go way back in time. I guess them holding in residual ghostly hauntings, that would not surprise me.
Chris is asking, can a third-degree initiate join other rites than U.S.-Canada-based rites?
Sure, of course. Absolutely. You could join, if you are a Blue Lodge Freemason and you wanted to join other Masonic bodies, that's fine. If you want to join other fraternal orders, that's fine. You could join groups such as the Odd Fellows. That would be allowed. Tall Cedars of Lebanon. You could join the OTO. Like I said, I don't think there's a prohibition against that. What you would get in trouble for and what you would be frowned upon on is joining a body that is holding itself out to be Freemasonry that isn't. That is what is known as clandestine Freemasonry. That's a no-no. And you could find that out. The Grand Lodge will have that information. So if you were asked to join a group, let's say, that was holding itself out as Masonry, or tied to Masonry, and that actually wasn't, or you were worried, you could go to the Grand Lodge and say, hey, look, I was asked to, I was invited or solicited to join this Masonic organization that's holding itself out. Is it? And they'll tell you. They'll say, so I mean, if it's the Scottish Rite, that's obviously a no-brainer, or the York Rite, that's a no-brainer. But if it was something that was, hey, I'm not so sure about this, you could always ask the Grand Lodge. They'll tell you. They'll give you a straight-up answer. But, you could join other fraternal orders that are not necessarily Masonic. Like I said, like the Odd Fellows or the OTO. The prohibition is organizations that are holding themselves out to be Freemasonry that are not.
Kevin is asking, so a Mason would believe in a Holy Father, but not necessarily a Son or Spirit?
Well, the answer to the question is you have to believe in a supreme being. That's the answer.
Nice and simple.
Yeah, as long as you believe in God, a supreme being, you're good to go.
Adam always throws a little bit of a curveball question because he knows that I have an absolute hatred to garden gnomes. They scare me. So he's wondering if any garden gnomes are Masons, and I would get that in there because now he's going to start off a ritual around here where on Facebook and on Twitter I'm absolutely going to be hammered by garden gnome pictures, and it scares the bejesus out of me because I have to look at them. But on a serious note, he is asking, he said he wanted to join once and was told he needed a sponsor. Is this true?
Yes, this is true. In order to join, I do not know of any garden gnomes that have joined Masonic Lodge.
Keep them out. Keep them out.
Yeah. But I will say this, Dave. I think you may run into a Masonic Lodge from time to time. They may have a garden gnome standing outside of it, perhaps in the garden, keeping watch.
Good enough to keep me away.
Yeah, but I don't think the gnome has actually been initiated. We keep him out. At any rate, yeah, you have to have a sponsor. That's right. You have to have a sponsor to join. That's what I had. You have to know somebody. So I guess the question that's being asked is, well, how do I join if I don't know somebody? Great point, because I've been asked this before. If you know somebody and you're friends with someone, you can go to them. If you do not know anyone who is a Mason and you wish to join a Masonic Lodge, the answer to that question is, so if you're in the United States, you have to find the Grand Lodge of your state. They will have a webpage. Each state is governed by a Grand Lodge. There is no United States of America Grand Lodge. It does not exist. Each state is run by its own Grand Lodge. I'm in Baltimore, Maryland. I'm under the aegis of the Maryland Grand Lodge. New York would be under the State Grand Lodge of New York. Pennsylvania. Virginia. The Grand Lodges do not bark orders or can influence one over the other. You are answerable to your state Grand Lodge. So if you do not know a Mason, let's just say, and you want to join and you're in Pennsylvania, let's just use that state. What my advice would be then, if you do not know a Freemason, but you want to join, is what I would do is I've instructed people to do this and they've done it and it's worked out just fine, is you go to you go on Google and you're going to Google the Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania and you're going to get a website and you're going to get a contact information, preferably a phone number. You're going to want to call this phone number during office hours, and you're going to talk to somebody, and you're going to tell them, my name is so-and-so, John Smith, and I live in, I don't know, let's just say Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. That's where I went to school, so we'll just use that for the sake of it. And you'll say, I want to join a lodge of Freemasons. I'm very interested in this, but I do not know any Freemasons. Can you help me? What they will do, what they should do, and they will do, is they'll get your address, and they will get your phone number, and then they will locate a Masonic Lodge that's close to where you live, and they will forward your information on to the secretary of that lodge. At that point in time, the secretary will probably call you or maybe even email you and say, introduce himself and say, hey, I was given this material, I was given your information from the State Grand Lodge from Pennsylvania, the Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania, and, I hear you want to join, but I hear you don't have a sponsor. I'd like to meet with you. At that point in time, you will have a meeting, and it'll probably be informal, and it'll probably be at your house, maybe at his house. If that was worrisome, at a public place, like a diner or something like that, or a restaurant, or a bar, and you would just sit there and talk to the guy, and he would probably ask you about why you wanted to join and what was motivating you. And at that point, if everything was okay, he would probably give you a petition to join. You could fill it out in front of him or mail it back to him when you were done with a check, which I think is for around probably $100. It's probably gone up since I joined. And at that point in time, you could get the ball rolling and join. I speak from experience when I've done this because it's not the way I joined. I knew somebody. I knew somebody who sponsored me, but I instructed other people, friends of mine, to follow this exact path, and they've done it, and it's worked out with great success. So if you're interested in joining, and you're in a state, and if you're in Canada, I guess you would find the Grand Lodge of Canada or the Grand Lodge of where you would be. Where are you, Dave? You told me.
I'm in a small hick town called 100 Mile House, but there is a lodge here.
Well, yeah, but what's it? Not Canada, but the province.
I'm in British Columbia.
British Columbia, that's the word I'm looking for. You'd probably find a Grand Lodge of British Columbia, and you'd want to talk to them, and they probably could put you on the right track. So if you're in Canada, if you're there, that's where you'd go. If you're in the United States, find the state Grand Lodge. That's what you'd want to do. So yes, you do need a sponsor, but if you don't have a sponsor, that's the path you'd want to take.
We'll sneak in one more question as we have about a minute here before we gotta go to our second break of the night. Michael is asking, what is the association between the Knights Templar and the Freemasons?
Yeah, listen, I can answer that. That's a great question, but I can't answer it in a minute. So you want to do that one after the break?
We can do that one after the break. I'm looking at all the questions here, and I'm thinking, man, all of these questions are going to take some time because they're very in-depth. That's our audience around here.
Well, that's great. That's great. And, I'm actually sitting here. I'm live on Twitter. So if anyone wants to, my Twitter handle is Rob W. Sullivan 4. So if you want to follow me or tweet to me or something, I can take a look at it as well. But I'll get into the Knights Templar. That's fascinating. But I can't do it in a minute. I have to do that one after the break.
Well, I can tell you this. If you go to hashtag Spaced Out Radio on Twitter, you're going to see gnome pictures all over the place.
I'll have to start retweeting them.
Oh, no. You don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. It scares the hell out of me enough, my friend. I tell you, these people, they just love to torture me with these bloody gnomes. I don't know what it is with them. Don't know what it is.
Gnomes don't scare me, but it seems like you have a dread fear of them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's a little bit of a fear. Robert W. Sullivan the Fourth is our guest tonight. We're talking everything Freemasons. In hour number 3, we're going to get to a few more questions, but we're also going to get into Easter eggs, movie symbology. How does Hollywood play into this? And you'll be involved as well. Because we always allow the audience to come on in and play. That's the beauty of this show. No more gnomes, though. The pictures are scaring the heck out of me. Literally. You're listening to Space Out Radio. I'm your host, Dave Scott. We'll be back right after this.
We're getting strange on Saturday nights. Hi there, this is Dave Cruz, and each Saturday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I will take you on a tour of the weird and obtuse on Spaced Out Saturdays. From aliens to Sasquatch and every tinfoil hat in between, we got you covered. Join us at spacedoutradio.com for Spaced Out Saturdays. See you there.
Not ready for bed on Saturday night? Right after Spaced Out Saturdays, hop on over to S4 with Corey Ruiz and me, Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. With S4, there are no limits to what we try and uncover. From government conspiracies to helping clean up the paranormal, no topic is safe on S4. We get to the heart of the matter, of the subjects you want to learn more about. So tune in on S4 starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, only on spacedoutradio.com.
Have you had an experience you can't explain? Would you like someone you can trust to look into it? We have just the place. The SOR Sightlines Report is the place for you to find answers. Whether it's Bigfoot, UFOs, Dogman, ghosts, aliens, or anything strange, the Sightlines Report will get you connected with one of our expert researchers to find out what's going on. All of your personal information is kept 100% confidential. The SOR Sightlines Report, a place for you to find the answers you need. Only at spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there. I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4 Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Wachowski's Strange Days.
This is Eric Markham, news editor for the Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter Online. We have put together a great team of writers and journalists from all over the world to bring you top-quality paranormal stories. From alien encounters to the latest conspiracies, you won't find any of that fake news here. True stories and top-notch reporting as we look to bring these experiences to the mainstream. The Encounter Online, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Do you want to know the truth? Do UFOs exist? Are aliens real? Are the governments hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO seekers, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow along with us as we journey across the United States, visiting UFO hotspots and alien hotspots, trying to document the UFO phenomenon. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
It's Cosmic Sundays with me, Elizabeth Anglin, in Cosmic Passport. Let me take you down a 3-hour spiritual journey where we will get into everything from ET contact to Psychic Sundays. It's a journey of listening and learning together with some of the best professionals in their fields. You can tune in to Cosmic Passport at spacedoutradio.com every Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back to the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the program, we end the week with Jack Kenna. We're going to be talking about paranormal television. Love it? Hate it? We're going to get into behind the scenes starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. We are also live on KTLK, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas. And if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. It is pyrheliometer. Pyrheliometer. Yes, whatever pyrheliometer is, that is your password for tonight. Make sure you use it wisely, Space Travelers, as Bill sets a password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, you could do so on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio if you want to connect live with me during the show as well. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR. We have a brand new YouTube channel. It's just Spaced Out Radio. So if you've subscribed to the other channel, Spaced Out Radio Show, that one has been compromised. We've had to get rid of it. We would appreciate if you move on over to our brand new YouTube link, Spaced Out Radio. We'll post it in the chat rooms and on Twitter as well. Now, head to our website, spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including joining the SOR Space Travelers Club for $5 a month, rock out to some Bumblefoot, shop at our Spaced Out Radio store, great video viewing from UFO seekers, Contact TV, and so much more. And don't forget, read up on your latest news on the Encounter Online of weird, strange things going on. We got it all for you on the Encounter. We'd love it if you hit up the Facebook page for the Encounter Online as well. And everything and so much more at spacedoutradio.com. Tonight, best-selling and award-winning author Robert W. Sullivan the Fourth is with us. His website, robertsullivaniv.com. And we're talking Freemasons, Freemasonry, secret societies, and so much more tonight. What an interesting conversation this is going to be. Robert, we could probably go about 3 or 4 shows and not even touch the tip of the iceberg on what we want to get for information from you, but thank you so much for taking our questions, being on this show, handling the audience questions so well. You've been a trooper so far.
Well, thank you, Dave, for having me on. It's been a tremendous show so far, and I really appreciate you having me on. And I'm having a great time. So let's keep it up. It's one more hour left, and if we don't get to a topic or something, or the movies or whatever, I mean, I can always come back on, do that at a later date. So however you want to do it,
perfect.
It's fine with me, and I'm having a great time. So let's continue on.
Let's just run with it. How about that?
Yeah.
See where it goes. I do want to remind our listeners that if you go to KMOX.com, CBS affiliate in St. Louis, I'm going to be interviewed there by Ryan at 12:06 Pacific time. That's 3:06 Eastern time. We're going to be talking UFOs, aliens, and so much more. So if you want to hear me again right after this show, I will be live on KMOX.com if you want to check it out. I highly hope you stick around, and we're going to keep the Spreaker chat room and the SOR Space Travelers chat room open for that as well. Continuing on with the audience questions here, right before the break, we asked Michael's question, Robert, which was, what is the association between the Knights Templar and the Freemasons?
Right, it's a great question, and it comes into Masonry through this guy named Andrew Michael the Chevalier Ramsay, who writes this oration where he links Masonry to the Templars. That's where this first comes into this, and he gets into. Chevalier Ramsay is a really interesting character as well. He's a founder of the Royal Society. He's Roman Catholic. He's a Freemason. He was the tutor of Charles Edward Stuart. In Rome, that's Bonnie Prince Charlie. That's one of the Stuart pretenders. And he writes this oration linking Masonry to the Templars. That's where this all comes from. And it's from this oration that these high degrees take off. And the high degrees, this rite of perfection, you're dealing with the Jesuits. The Templars are basically proto-Jesuits, essentially. And the high degrees have elements of Templarism in them. It's papal monarchy, Christian Kabbalism. They're very Roman Catholic. And this is how the Templars get into them. And even to this day, when you go into the York Rite, like I was saying, I think in the first hour, the end body of the York Rite is the Knights Templar. I mean, and it's a modern Knights Templar, but they incorporate and use all the symbols of the ancient Templars. The white robes with the red crosses. The Cross of Lorraine. They use all that. Whether or not the Templars, I believe the Templars, there is a nexus to the Templars and the Freemasons. I think there's much more. I think there's more to it than speculation. I think Ramsay was onto something here. I mean, you have the Templars coming back from the Holy Lands. Whatever they discovered over there, I believe it was probably some sort of sacred wisdom, Kabbalistic knowledge. As soon as they come back to Europe, I mean, you have these Gothic cathedrals popping up, being built by the stonemasons, with just this beautiful architecture, the astral alignments, the flying buttresses, the mathematical geometric perfection. I mean, where are they getting this knowledge from? And they're getting from the Templars, and they're getting it from some sort of secret mystery school in the Middle East. And of course, when the Templars are disbanded, it seems like they just kind of, almost went underground. Some say they fled to Scotland. Some say, that some of the early Templars actually became Freemasons. This has been documented by. A lot of people think this is a conspiracy. There's been a lot of historians who have talked about this. One of them is a guy named James Stephen Curl. He wrote a book called The Art and Architecture of Freemasonry. He's a college professor, and it's a great book. It's one of the ones I relied on in writing Royal Arch. And he gets into the whole Templar Freemasonic connection. He's of the mind that I am. He says, I can't quite put my finger on it, he said, but there is definitely some sort of nexus between the Templars and the Freemasons. I mean, even when the Templars go to Scotland, you have these weird sundials popping up. I mean, that's important because, again, dealing with the sun and solar measurement and the solar calendar. A lot of the Gothic cathedrals have solar references as well. I mean, the Chartres Cathedral, the Great Tower is, 365 feet. 111 meters, again, 365, a reference to the solar year. There is definitely a nexus, I believe, to the historic Templars and to Masonry. But the whole Templar connection comes out of this oration in 1737 given by this guy named Andrew Michael the Chevalier Ramsay, where he skews this Masonic history of Ramsay and takes it off into this Roman Catholic bent, rather than Anderson, who had this biblical history of it.
All right, let's get to Ron's question. It's kind of interesting because a lot of people have this belief, but he's saying, what information or connection to the Antichrist are Freemasons privy to?
None to my knowledge. I can answer that pretty quickly.
Well, we should have asked that in that final minute.
Yeah, no, I know of no connection between Masonry and the Antichrist. No, I can't think of anything. Let me think real quick. No, I don't see any connection there.
What about to the Vatican? Because the Vatican is so mysterious as well.
Well, I think with the Vatican, it's interesting because, you have the Jesuits are the agents of the Vatican. And what a lot of people aren't aware of is, the Jesuits were actually suppressed by the Vatican. And I argue in the book, and a lot of other researchers have suggested this, when the Jesuits were suppressed in 17 whatever it was, 1771, 1773. I mean, it's right behind that you have the Illuminati popping up. I mean, all the Illuminati guys are all Jesuit trained. And even Masons who joined the Illuminati said, this is all bullcrap. He said, this is all nonsense. This is all Counter-Reformation. This is all the Jesuits, the Illuminati is promoting this, egalitarian, anti-papal platform, but it's all the Jesuits under another name, and it's all the Counter-Reformation. It's all actually secretly designed to lure you back to the Vatican. There's a guy named Adolf Knigge. He was a very famous German Freemason, and he joined the Illuminati. He left it, and he said, "This is all the Jesuits under another name," and that definitely seems to be the case. The Jesuits, these guys were like the arm, the CIA arm of the Vatican. In the 1500s, 1600s, 1700s, it got so bad that they're actually suppressed by the Vatican. They don't return until after the Napoleonic Wars, when the Society of Jesus is returned. And it seems like the Illuminati was just sort of an invention just to carry them through the Republic of Napoleon and the Napoleonic Wars. But yeah, there is, when you get into the high degrees, there is this definitely decided papal feel to them. That's no surprising when, you're dealing with the Jesuits and the Counter-Reformation. That shouldn't be surprising.
Bill is asking, what are your thoughts, Robert, regarding the P2 Masonic Lodge in Italy and Licio Gelli and what happened there? Are you familiar with it?
Yeah, this is just another, the guy was hung. He was in a Masonic lodge. He was a Vatican banker. The whole thing is shrouded in mystery. So it's a conspiracy theory. Some people think the Masons were involved because he had bricks in his coat pockets, although the brick is not a symbol of Freemasonry in any way. If the killers wanted to form a nexus to Freemasonry, the last thing I would have put in his pocket were bricks. I could think of 10 other things I would have put on the guy if I wanted to know that there was a Masonic influence. But we really don't know what happened. It's a lot of speculation around it. And, I'm familiar with it. But like I said, it's more speculation than proven hard facts as to what was really going on with it.
Let's go back to Chris's question. He says, did it cause a schism in Masonry when the British formed their own church with their own vernacular?
Hang on, say that again. You broke up a little bit.
No problem. He's asking, did it cause a schism in Masonry when the British formed their own church with their own vernacular?
Well, hang on. Your timeline's thrown off here because you had the formation of the Church of England. That happens in Henry VIII. That happens before Freemasonry. That's definitely a schism. You had the Catholic Church being thrown out. You had the creation of the Church of England. At that point in time, you had the Counter-Reformation created at the Council of Trent, where the Jesuits were put in charge of destroying Western civilization, burning everything to the ground, quite literally. You had this big schism. This is the Spanish Armada coming to overthrow Queen Elizabeth. And it's argued that John Dee, her court astrologer, actually sunk the Armada, conjured a demon to conjure a storm to sink the Spanish Armada. But you had this definite schism with the Vatican and the Church of England. The Church of England is just the church, is just the Catholic Church, only instead of the Pope, it's the English monarch is in charge of the Church of England. This is why you had this problem, the Act of Settlement being passed in 1701 that prohibited a Roman Catholic from sitting on the English throne. It's an obvious conflict of interest. And this is what sparked the English Civil War of the 1600s with Oliver Cromwell. At any rate, so you have the Church of England being formed, which is a Protestant church. But the person who runs it is the English monarch. That's the de facto Pope, the Protestant Pope, as it were, is the English monarch. So you had that happening well before the creation of Freemasonry. Then you have Freemasonry coming out of England in 1717. The schism with Masonry at that point is with America. After 1776 and then 1779, and this is another thing we won't have time to get into. It's just too long to involve. it has to do with in I think it was in the 1770s. There was a British, an Englishman named William Preston, who wrote a Masonic treatise called The Illustrations of Freemasonry. Now, if that name sounds familiar, it should, because it was written by another Mason I'll get to in a minute. They have the same title. Preston's Illustrations of Masonry lays out that the English Mason is when an Englishman becomes a Freemasonry, becomes a Freemason, he is the most loyal subject to the crown. There is no higher loyal subject than an English Freemason. In 1776, we have the American Revolution here, and of course we threw out the British. And a lot of American Masons were sitting around scratching their heads saying to ourselves, well, we have this Masonic illustration written by Preston saying we're the most loyal subject of the king. How do we reconcile this? And it's reconciled by a man named Thomas Smith Webb, who writes a treatise with the exact same name called The Illustrations of Freemasonry. It's a long story. We won't have time for it. There's no way. But in a nutshell, the English monarch in the United States is replaced by George Washington. And Washington becomes this Masonic Enochian godfather of this new Masonic nation. And in America, instead of paying homage to the monarch, you pay homage to George Washington. And to this day, almost all Masonic lodges you go into, or the Grand Lodge buildings, will have a bust or a picture or a print of George Washington somewhere in there, who is this de facto Masonic grandfather of the country. Washington, having no natural children, instead birthed this Masonic republic. That's the way it's looked upon in Freemasonry. So kind of, I guess that sort of answers the question as best I could. So the schism is really with the Church of England and the Vatican. Within Masonry, the schism is with American Masons and English Freemasons.
Let's get to Craig's question. He is asking, how do Masons view the story of Adam and Eve then? Do you draw a parallel between other creation stories?
Well, this would be just up to the Mason. I should caveat this. Masonry has no view on any of this. This is all the individual Mason would have So the answer to the question was, you just have to answer the Masonry itself has no doctrine or anything. It teaches morality, but there is no doctrine of Masonry that ties into religion. The question would be, you'd have to ask an individual Mason what they think of the Adam and Eve story. Masonry, the requirement is you believe in a supreme being. You could look at the Adam and Eve story as allegorical. You could look at it as actual. This is a question that would just have to be answered by the individual Mason. Masonry proper doesn't have any sort of religious doctrine or anything like that it promotes. This would be just a question for the individual Mason.
BTO is asking, Robert, who do you then consider to be the supreme being? Is there a singular entity who created all that is?
Well, for me personally, I just look at it as a God figure. I would call this character or this person or this entity God. And I believe this as a creator figure, as a creator of the universe, as a creator of Earth. I believe in divine spark. I believe in divine spirit. I believe in an afterlife. This is me speaking, Robert Sullivan. And I believe that there is consciousness after death, and that there is another plane of reality after death. You want to call it another dimension, another form of existence, consciousness after this life expires. I fully believe in that. And I believe that this spirit or divine spark comes from a divine creator entity, which I would define as God. That's the best way I could answer it.
Right. Let's get to...
And that's me answering it. That's me, Robert Sullivan, answering it. I'm not speaking on behalf of another Freemason.
No, and that's fine. And I got a couple questions here from Craig, who is asking, does your right level matter when it comes to sponsorship?
No. You have to, the sponsor has to be in the Blue Lodge. That's it. You have to be recommended by a Blue Lodge Freemason. The lodge, the brother does not have to be in the Scottish Rite or the York Rite. They have to be a Master Mason of a Blue Lodge. Whether they're in the York Rite or Scottish Rite or some other body really has no meaning. They would just have to be in the Blue Lodge of Freemasonry. And again, if you do not know anyone, reach out to the Grand Lodge, find their website, and they could put you on the right path. But the sponsor would have to just be a Blue Lodge Freemason there's no requirement that Mason has to be in the Scottish Rite or that he has any sort of influence or anything like that. He'd have to be in the Blue Lodge. That's it.
His follow-up question, can a Canadian sponsor an American, say in an American lodge?
No, they would have. They could recommend. No, they couldn't. They could do what I'm doing. If I'm in the United States and you're in Canada and you wanted to join, you'd have to reach out to, your Grand Lodge in Canada. I would have no influence there. And likewise, it would be the other way around. Now, if you know somebody, like if I knew someone in Canada in a lodge, I mean, I could reach out to them and say, hey, I know this guy, go talk to him. Yeah, I mean, I could do that, of course. But ultimately, the decision would be made by the local lodge. I mean, that would be the lodge that would be voted upon. I mean, I could certainly be influenced. I mean, I could certainly talk to somebody, or act as a reference. But I couldn't say, hey, you got to take this guy or something. I mean, that's an individual, that's a lodge decision. I mean, even now I couldn't do that. I mean, I can only recommend somebody, ultimately it's going to be the lodge and a lodge voting system that's going to, decide if a person gets in or not. But I mean, I could certainly act as a reference. I could act as a sponsor. I could talk to somebody. If you're in Canada, they'd probably have no reason to talk to me. They'd want to talk to you more than me. And would want to speak to, why you'd want to join. But again, I'd have no problem speaking or serving as a sponsor or something. I'd have to know the person, but it would be the individual lodge that would ultimately take the steps to get you in.
One of our brand new listeners, BBG, is asking in their Spreaker chat room, how do you feel about having to keep all these secrets?
Well, I feel fine about it. I sleep very well at night, and I have no problem with it at all. I mean, it's fine with me. I don't have a problem with it.
She's asking as well, is it fun, or do you or other people get a sense of feeling of superiority with being a Mason?
No, I have no inferiority complex or feelings of superiority. It was not my motivation for joining. I was interested in it. I was interested in Masonry, and it's a fascinating study, and it greatly impacted my life so much that I wrote a 700-page book about it. If you want to know more about Masonry, I mean, like I said, I get into a lot of the history about it. So I talk about it. I mean, I don't keep it all to myself. You can read the book. I mean, the book's on Amazon. If you're in Canada, it's on the Amazon Canada site, and you can get the ebook as well. It's a lot cheaper. So, no, I don't feel superior or anything like that. I feel proud that I'm a Mason, but I don't feel like I'm better than anybody or anything like that. That's certainly not a teaching that Masonry embraces or is anything like that. It's about the uplifting of mankind, of the uplifting of the self, not to feel better or put down somebody. And, like I said, Masonry had a tremendous influence upon me, so much so that I wanted to share the information with the non-Masons. You can read my book and, learn more about it. So there you have it.
Your fellow, I apologize on laughing here, but your fellow Mason friend Chris from Den of Lore is saying or asking, Illuminati boxers or briefs?
Oh, boxers.
Oh, I thought that was funny. I really did.
Yeah, I was on Den of Lore about, 2 months ago, I want to say. So yeah, it's a good show.
You mentioned you had a UFO experience, and a few people have been asking if you could tell us about it, since this is Spaced Out Radio, after all.
Of course. Yeah, it was funny. I was just on another show, and they were asking me about this. Yeah, absolutely. I'll talk about it. I was in high school. It was the late 1980s. I was not a Freemason. It was around 88, I want to say. It was in 1989. I can tell you where it happened. You can Google map it. It was at the intersection it's in Maryland. It's in Baltimore, or it's right over the Baltimore city line. It was at the intersection of Old Pimlico Road and Falls Road. If you map or Google it today or Google map it, you're going to see that there's a light intersection there now with traffic lights. Those are new. They came in the early 2000s. Back in the late 1980s, it was a one-way stop, and you stopped, and the road you can only make you come down Old Pimlico, and you can only make a right or left on the falls. You can't go straight. The road ends. I want to say it was in 1988, maybe 87. I don't think it was 89. It was late. It was at night. And I was at a friend's house. I was in high school. And I was at a friend's house, and we were working on something like a school project or something. And I want to say it wasn't late. I wasn't drinking. There was no drugs involved or anything like that. This was just a buddy's house of mine. I mean, his parents were there. This wasn't any sort of late night party or anything. It was a school night. I mean, it's like a Monday or Tuesday or something. And I want to say it was late, but it wasn't late. It was probably like around 10:30, 11 o'clock or so. And it was time to go home. And a friend of mine was driving me home. He had picked me up and he was going to drop me off. He lived, beyond me. He was going to drop me off and then keep going to his house. We were, 16, 17, 15 at the time. Driver's licenses, so I guess 18 maybe. So maybe it was 89. So at any rate, so let's see, when you get a driver's license, 16. So yeah, this was probably around 87, 88. He picked me up and he drove me to the friend's house. It was around 10:30 at night. He said, let's go. We're leaving and we're driving down Old Pimlico Road. And again, it's around 10:30 at night. And at, I don't know, it's probably 100 yards away or so at Falls Road, where the intersection is. There's this little tiny mound, little hill with trees on top of it. Well, coming over the tree line, I'd say it's about 10 feet over the tree line, was this unidentified flying object. It was a UFO. It was, the way I can describe it was a rectangle. It was a flying rectangle. It was probably around 50 yards long. It was probably around 20 yards, maybe a little larger than that, wide, and it was probably around 10 yards thick. And it was coming directly at us. It was moving very slow, probably around 5 miles an hour. It had two white lights coming out the front of it on either side, on the right and the left, and it had two white lights beneath it coming out below it. It was a perfectly shaped rectangle, black. It had no reflection. We got down at the intersection, and when we hit the intersection, the thing was right over us at this point. I rolled down my window, and I stuck my head out, and it was making no noise. I mean, it was running completely silent. It had no exhaust, and it had no propellers, and it had no wings. Just think of a shoebox floating over the tree line. That's the best way I could describe it. With white lights coming out the front, white lights coming out the bottom. Then in the center of it, underneath of it, there was these red and white lights moving in a circular pattern. And we turned under it, and we turned down Falls Road, and we were driving. We were talking, and we said, that was a UFO we just saw. And my buddy was like, yeah, no kidding. And it struck me when I saw it, and it strikes me to this day that it was a government-made entity. It did not strike me as that there was little green men behind it. It looked like to me that this was being made. It looked like a government craft made with secret government technology. That's what the initial impression was. At any rate, where I lived at my parents' house, when we got up there, you could look out over at it. And you could still see it floating over the tree line, just moving very slowly across the tree line, moving at around, 5, maybe 6, 7 miles an hour. You could still see it. You could still see it silhouetted against the darkness, just sitting there floating, moving across. I remember it to this day. I saw it. I know what I saw. I'm not lying. I'm not making anything up. And again, I saw what I saw, and it was the one time that I had an encounter with a UFO, and that was the story.
Changes you, doesn't it? Makes you think differently.
It does. It did. It makes you think that there's more out there than you're aware of, that there's, that there are things going on that you're not aware of, and that this is real, that, extraterrestrials, secret knowledge, secret government ships, ghosts. I had a paranormal experience when I was in college, and it's real, it really does bring it home that this is real.
Fill us in on that paranormal experience, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. That was at Gettysburg College. I was a senior at the time. This I do remember more. This was the spring of 1995, and I was in my fraternity house, which was Lambda Chi Alpha, and I was at the library. Again, no drugs, no alcohol, no booze, nothing. I was at the library, the Musselman Library. And it was late night. The library was open 24 hours. It is open 24 hours. And I was over there. It was probably around 2 o'clock in the morning. I was doing research or writing, working on something for one of my classes. And it was around 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'd had enough, and I decided to go home, walk back to the fraternity house. The fraternity house, Lambda Chi Alpha, is off campus. It's about a block beyond the college campus. And the fastest way is I left the library, and I'm still on campus, and I'm walking on campus, and then I cross the street, and I'm in front of the cafeteria, the dining hall. And as I walk by the dining hall, now I'm getting into the residential neighborhood. This is where the fraternity house is. Now I'm getting off campus. It's around 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm walking along, and all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, I see this yellowish white light walking completely parallel with me, moving parallel with me, about 5 feet to my left. And my initial reaction to seeing this thing was, I thought it was either a bicycle headlight or a car headlight. But as I'm walking, it's moving completely parallel with me. And it hits me in the corner of my eye. It hits me. I'm like, this is not a car. And it's not a bicycle because it would move past me by now. And I'm walking along, and it's just walking. It's 5 feet in the middle of the road. I'm on the sidewalk. It's in the middle of the road, walking, moving, floating. It's a yellow-white orb, I'd say probably the size of a basketball, hovering probably 4 feet off the ground, moving completely parallel with me. And I'm walking, and it's still moving with me. And I probably walked about 10 paces. And I see it out of the corner of my eye, and I know it's there. And I stopped, and it stopped. And then I turned and looked at it. And there in front of me was, again, about 5 feet, 6 feet in front of me was this hovering, yellowish white orb ball of light just sitting there right in the middle of the road. And I hauled it. I ran as fast as I could back to my fraternity house. I was grease lightning. I moved. I don't think I've ever ran that fast before in my life. I ran back to my fraternity house. I came in. And of course, there's always some brothers moving around. They were sitting there, and I came in. I was white as a sheet and, sweating. And they said, "What's the matter? You look like you just saw a ghost." And I said, "Yeah, I just did. I saw this. I told them what happened. And that was the one time I had contact with the paranormal. And I'll never forget that one either."
That would give me shivers. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, when I saw that, that was like, the, oh my God, this is real. And that scared me. When you see something like that and it's so lucid and it's so right there in front of your eyes, that really brought it home for me. Like I said, there was no drugs, no alcohol. I was sober as a judge, and I saw it. And that really brought it home.
Back to some audience questions, if you don't mind. BBG is asking, what is the number one reasons guys would join the Masons?
Again, you're going to have to, it's all individual. I can only give you the reason I joined, which was I had a lot of family members who joined. I wanted to continue a family tradition. I had grandfathers, great-grandfathers who were involved with the Masons. I was interested in the wisdom that it was imparting. I was interested in the teachings. I was interested in the community involvement, and that's why I joined. I guess other Masons are going to give you different answers, so I can only give you my perspective on it. But that's probably a good roundabout answer as to why people join. But again, it's different for every Mason. But that was why I wanted to join.
BTO's question is, why hold secrets? If some of these secrets are so important for the whole of civilizations within this universe, then why keep them secret? And I think a lot of people, as I preface this question, would say the same thing about the Vatican, how the Vatican holds so much to life that we think they do in their catacombs and their libraries and their government buildings that the public will never see.
Yeah, it is secret, but they do impart the wisdom. It is there if you want it. So there is secret wisdom there, but you can access it. It just took me 20 years to do it, and to put it all together in this book that I wrote. But it is there. A lot of times, and this is probably going to give you an answer you're not expecting, a lot of times the secret is lost. you'll find in many Masonic lodges that they don't understand themselves, the deeper meaning of it. It's just the ritual we do, and that's it. When you really start to study it and you read the works, you'll find that this stuff is encoding a lot of truths and is at least trying to. And it doesn't become aware to many Masons. Some people go through it and they never pick up on this. It was just a fascinating thing for me. And like I said, I put 20 years of research into this. I didn't spend every minute in a library, of course, but it was just something that fascinated me. And, I guess, why do it? I guess, it's just the way it was done. I mean, the information is there. And, I thought enough of it to write a book about it. And I think I impart some of the wisdom in the book at any rate. So, it was just a fascinating thing. And I think the wisdom and it's, I don't want to say it's secrets, it's more wisdom. That's the way I would describe it as. It conceals wisdom. And, the wisdom, can be imparted to you. It was imparted to me and I wrote a book about it. So that would be my answer.
The symbology, I believe, scares a lot of people.
Well, that may be a reason why they keep it secret. There is a notion to bury your head in the sand when you come across something new or something different or something that teaches you to think something out may not be what you perceive it to be. That's very possible. I've often considered that. The book, I'm not going to lie to you. The book is controversial. I mean, I have been denounced as demonic by other Freemasons. The Royal Arch of Enoch is not without controversy. I'm fully aware of that. But I thought it was too important that I wanted to write it. I mean, there was nothing in it that's going to get me thrown out of Freemasonry. But it is definitely controversial. And that has occurred to me, what you said, that people may be scared of it to an extent. That would not surprise me.
Do you think that just the symbols that people see around their towns, whether it's in a park, on a park bench that's donated, or on a Masonic temple, or they see the stickers on people's cars, do you think the fear that a lot of people have in these groups is warranted?
No. I don't think there's anything to be afraid of. No, not at all. I don't think it's warranted at all. I mean, this stuff is publicly marked. If we really wanted to keep it secret, we wouldn't put it anywhere. Most Masons, like I said, identify themselves with jewelry. I know I do. Masonic lodges identify themselves with their symbols. It's nothing to be scared of. The symbols are not in any way designed to be malignant or evil. They're actually designed to be very positive. So no, I don't think it's anything at all to be scared upon. It may have an air of mystery to it. It may be something that's kind of have an air nebulous or perhaps mysterious. That's the better word. But no, I don't think it's anything to be fearful of. My goodness, no.
So why do you think the public has this impending fear of Freemasonry?
Well, I don't know if they really have it anymore. It goes back to a lot of this goes back to the 1820s, especially in the American context, when what happened was, it's a long story. I know I won't be able to get involved with it. Masons were running the government, and there was a secret cabal of Masons. The Royal Arch Masons were running the government behind the scenes, and this happened. If the listeners may be aware of a term called the Colombian Illuminati. This was the American version of the Illuminati. This was real. The guy who ran it was a guy named DeWitt Clinton. And he was the de facto puppet master running the country behind the scenes. And this came out in the 1820s, that there was this Masonic cabal pulling the strings behind the country. These guys were doing it. They saw themselves as incredibly positive because of the early stages of the country. They were using high degree Masonry to unify the Jeffersonian Republicans and the Federalists. That's what was going on, but they were doing it behind the scenes. There was no transparency. It got found out. There was this huge backlash against Masonry. It almost went out of business. And this is where all this sinister air comes from. Masonry was all but put out of business. Masonry had to distance itself from the esoteric. The cabal was destroyed. It was broken up. Masonry survived it because of the president at the time was a man named Andrew Jackson, who was a Freemason, a former Grand Master of the state of Tennessee. He did not give in to the anti-Masonry. The first third political party in the United States was called the Anti-Masons. And what happened was Masonry survived it, but it emerged as it would just do this. We're just a charity organization. We don't have anything to do with the esoteric. All we do is charity work. That was sort of the philosophy that carried Masonry through the 19th century, even through the 20th century. But it still persisted that there was this deep, dark conspiracy going on when there really wasn't. And then what made it worse was you have Masonry being the foundation of the country. You have all this Masonic architecture all over the place, the Masonic symbols all over the place, the colleges, the universities, the state seals, everything is Freemasonic. The triple division of government is Freemasonic. The White House is a Masonic temple. And people think, oh my God, it's this dark, deep Masonic conspiracy going on, when the founders were using Masonry to nation build. That's what was really going on. But people persist in believing that there's this demonic conspiracy going on when there really isn't. And it all comes out of this William Morgan affair that happened in the 1820s. And again, coupled with Masonic symbols and Masonic architecture and Masonic philosophy, which was being used to construct the country. I can understand where people would be paranoid about it, but it's nothing to be afraid of, and it's not happening anymore.
Was it happening in the past, though?
Of course. The Masons ran the country. They founded the country. The Constitution is a Masonic document. The triple division of government between the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary comes out of Blue Lodge Freemasonry. Separation of church and state comes out of Blue Lodge Freemasonry. The White House is a Masonic temple. The United States presidency was roiled after a Royal Arch Masonic Sun priest. The whole country, the United States, is a giant Masonic lodge, is the way you should look at it. I have a chapter in the Royal Arch of Enoch book called The United States of Freemasonry. The state seals are Masonic. Union College is connected in New York is Masonic. Every college after that is based on its aerial template. That's Masonic. New York, the Empire State, Masonic. Texas, the Lone Star State, Masonic. California, the Golden State, its seal, Masonic. The St. Louis Gateway Arch, Masonic. Washington Monument, Masonic. White House, Masonic. State Capitol buildings with a dome on top, Masonic. I could sit here for 5 hours telling you about everything in this country that is Freemasonic. It is all coming out of Freemasonry, Freemason rituals, and Freemasonic philosophies. And I wrote a 700-page book about it.
We're down to literally our last 10 minutes with you. And I'm surprised at how quickly this 3 hours has gone. So once again, thank you for being with us. I want to get to Everett's question here. And he says, what you have learned as a Mason, has it altered or affected your opinion on what occurred during your paranormal experiences?
No. The experiences happened before I became a Mason, or the UFO and the paranormal experiences. And my Masonic Lodge, my joining of the Masons, I wouldn't say altered it or anything or had an influence on it because the events happened beforehand. So my answer to that would be no. I joined Masonry because I was interested in its teachings. I was interested in carrying on a family tradition. I was interested in the community, and how it was involved and how it was a part of the fabric of our society. But no, I wouldn't say that it really, my experiences happened beforehand and, there was really no connection between one and the other, I would say.
Do you talk a lot about paranormal or UFO or strange experiences when you're meeting with your fellow brothers?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. It is topics that get brought up. Absolutely. UFOs, ghosts. You'll find many Freemasons are interested in these subjects. Cryptozoology, the Loch Ness Monster. A lot of the Masons I know, we're all big fans of the X-Files. UFOs and paranormal and the occult. Yeah, this is something that a lot of Masons are interested in. Not all Masons. I would always say that again. It depends on the individual Mason. It's something I'm interested in. But yeah, absolutely. I talk about it with other Masons, no problem.
Question from Goddess Michelle at hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and I think it's a polarizing question, but I think it actually means a lot to the way society has changed. What is the Masons' rules on transgendered people?
I don't know. My gut, my understanding with it is, I mean, it's don't ask, don't tell. No one would ever ask you about it if you join. A woman can't join. So if you're a male, you could join. I guess, it's if you, I know of no prohibition against it. It would be a don't ask, don't tell. No one would ask you about it, and you would have no reason to say. So if you were a male and you wanted to join, I don't think it would be a problem. I don't think. I guess it would depend maybe on the lodge. You probably have some more lodges that are probably maybe more liberal than maybe some other lodges. That may be a factor. I mean, a lot of these lodges, I was on talking with someone else about this, your Blue Lodge or Freemasonry takes on a lot of times the what's the word I'm looking for? The personality of the brothers. For instance, the lodge I joined, I joined was the second or third oldest lodge in the state of Maryland. It predates the founding of the city of Baltimore, and it was the Jewish lodge. If you were Jewish in Baltimore, you went into Amicable St. John's Lodge number 25. When I joined, it was just Amicable Lodge number 25. It's since merged with another lodge. Starting in the 1970s, they started letting in deists and Christians. Up until then, it was all Jewish. If you were non-Jewish, you never even bothered with it. So the lodges can take on the personality of the brothers that are in it. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is if you had more maybe of a conservative lodge, maybe they may frown upon it a little more than more of a liberal lodge, I suppose. But I know of no prohibition against it, and I know of no reason why someone like that couldn't join. I believe it would be a don't ask, don't tell policy. No one would ask you it, and you would have no reason to volunteer it. But again, I would see really no problem with it.
Can you trade lodges? Let's say you don't get along with a few people in your own lodge. Can you, say, move to the next town and go to that lodge?
Sure, absolutely. If you wanted to transfer your membership to another lodge, that can be done. That definitely can be done. If you are in, I'm just hypothetical. If you're in Baltimore, let's say, and you move to another city, I don't know, let's just say Los Angeles, and you wanted to transfer your membership, yes, that can be done. The only condition is you have to be in good standing with the original lodge that you're in. And what does that mean? What does that mean to be in good standing? Well, you can't, be in any trouble or anything, and you have to be up to date on your dues. If that's the case, you can transfer lodge membership. That's not a problem.
Are there a lot of interpersonal rivalries in these groups?
No, not really. Not that I'm aware of. Most people are friendly, in the lodge. Most people get along. Of course, I'm sure, I've never had a problem with anyone. I've been on, in my lodge, I've never had a problem with anyone. I'm not going to come here and say that disputes don't occur. I'm sure they do. But I've never been privy to one. I was on a show years ago with a Mason, who did not like my material and, he was very ugly towards me. So I've experienced it, but in my lodge, no, I've never had a problem with anyone, but I'm sure that there are disputes in lodges or, people have problems with somebody. That's just life, and I'm sure it's happened. I can't imagine that it hasn't.
Do you think, as time winds down here, that there will come a day where the lodge isn't needed, or is it so indoctrined in everyday life that it will continue for another millennia or so?
Yeah, I don't see it going away anytime soon. There seems to be a renewed interest in it, especially on the esoteric side of things. This is due to the, National Treasure movies and Dan Brown and the internet, certainly. So I don't see it going away anytime soon. Some places you hear that membership is just dropping off. Some places you hear it's picking up. I've, in the last couple of years, I've been because of my radio shows, I've been involved with getting people involved in Masonic lodges. So it seems to be here. It seems to be doing okay. And, only time will tell. But at least for right now, I don't see it going away anytime soon. But who knows? Anything can happen.
Are the rules different from lodge to lodge, or is there like a code of conduct that every lodge has to follow?
Yeah, it's definitely, there are universal things that go on in every lodge. The ritual is universal. The code of conduct is pretty universal. I mean, you can find variants. I mean, of course, you get into some old timers places, and in different places, I've told there's places where you drink inside the lodge. That's, in my lodge, that's not allowed. People have smoked inside the lodge. Again, that's not allowed. It just depends on the lodge. A lot of it's pretty universal, the rules, the membership, the ritual. But of course, like I said, the lodge takes on a lot of times the personality of the members. So you will find variants along the way.
So let's say you're, like you being a 32nd degree Mason. If you see someone who's like a 7th or 8th degree Mason walking by you on the sidewalk, do they have to move over and give you the right of way? I know it sounds like a silly question, but honestly, I'm curious about it.
No, nothing like that would ever occur. For starters, there would be no way of me knowing that there are 7th or 8th degree. That would be impossible to tell. A lot of times the Scottish Rite, the Scottish Rite it doesn't work the way you think it does. It's you just go through the degrees and you end at the 32. There's no like where one's higher than another. It doesn't work like that. In the Blue Lodge, now in the Blue Lodge, when you're like a 1st degree, if you're an entered apprentice, you can't sit in the lodge of the 2nd or 3rd degree. But no, there's no, now in a college fraternity house, that's a different story. That's rushing, that's hazing. The brothers will make you go out and get pizza, run errands, do stuff like that. But in Masonry, no, there's no like, I'm better than you or go do this or anything like that. You're all treated with respect. No one looks down upon, if you're a master Mason, no one's going to think, look down upon an inner apprentice to make him shine your shoes or anything like that. That doesn't happen. Now in a college fraternity house, it will. But in Masonry, nothing like that happens.
Well, are there any unique traditions that you follow that you could share?
Unique traditions?
Yeah.
Well, the rituals, of course. We all share the rituals. Every person you see sitting around you has gone through those rituals. That's something we all have in common. Absolutely. The Scottish Rite, you go through the rituals. That's a tradition. And absolutely, it's uniform in all the lodges, and what keeps us all together.
We only have about a minute and a half left with you tonight. I would love it if you use that time to tell us about your books, where people can find them and purchase them.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Dave, for having me on Spaced Out Radio. It was a great show. I'd love to come back on. It was tremendous. I really, really enjoyed it. I had a great time. And we'll definitely have to do this again in the near future.
I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're interested in me, I have 3 books out right now. I have a 4th coming out in a month. I have the Royal Arch of Enoch, which is about Masonry. That's what we've been primarily talking about tonight. I have 2 books about movie symbolism, about occult imagery in movies. They're called Cinema Symbolism, and of course Cinema Symbolism 2. These books are readily available. They are on Canada, Amazon. They're available on all the major online sites, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. They're in the print edition. They're in ebook form. The easiest way also is to just go to my website. My name is Robert W. Sullivan the Fourth. That's my name. So my website is just that, Robert W. Sullivan, the letter I, the letter V, IV.com for the fourth, Robert W. Sullivan, IV.com. There's links there to purchase the books, links there about upcoming, the page has events and appearance, upcoming radio shows I'm going to do. There's links to my social media, my YouTube channel, loads of archived interviews there. Follow me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is RobWSullivan4. Again, my website is very easy to navigate, www.robertwsullivaniv.com. Links to buy the books. It's on all the online major retailers, Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. You can get the Kindle. You can get the ebook. You can get the Nook or the print edition if you want that. www.robertwsullivaniv.com.
Robert, thank you so much for being on Spaced Out Radio tonight. We are definitely going to do this again. I really appreciate you taking the time to teach us for the last 3 hours about Freemasonry. It was really a pleasure of all of ours to have you on the show, and yes, we will do this again.
Thank you, Dave, for having me on. It was a great show. I love being here, and I look forward to coming back.
Excellent. You hold on. I'm going to wrap this thing up. In the background, we got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL, formerly of Guns N' Roses, with Little Brother Is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio. I do want to remind all our listeners, in about 8 minutes, I'm going to be on the air being interviewed by Ryan at KMOX CBS Talk Radio in St. Louis. We're talking UFOs and aliens. So if you want to check that out, head to KMOX.com. I will be there. I hope you join us too, and keep the chat rooms open so that way you guys can chat along. I will be following. Tomorrow night on the program, we end the week talking paranormal television. Paranormal TV star Jack Kenna is going to join us from New Hampshire. It's going to be a great show indeed. We're going to learn the ins and outs and behind the scenes of what goes on with paranormal television. We get going at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. I want to say thank you once again to Robert W. Sullivan the Fourth for joining us tonight, as well as my great team who helps put this show together. And mainly, all of you out there, those participating on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio, those listening at home, in their cars, wherever you may be, including our chat rooms. You share our shows, you're showing us off on social media, and I tell you, we appreciate it, because that's why we keep getting bigger and better. Because together, my friends, we own the night. I will talk to you in 21 hours from now. Thanks for being with us. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. See you tomorrow, guys. Good night.